Good day, guys. Guess who is a full-time streamer now? That was my last video essay sponsor. Over and dusted. So we're about to go full blast, I think. Over and dusting. True. At least my last one for now. Maybe if I get other ones in the future, I'll go with that. But no, for the meantime, we are going to maybe set up a schedule, and then this will be what we do now. And I think if I ever get the urge to do a video essay, I'm probably not even going to do it. I'm just going to do, I think what I'll try doing instead, and I prefer this idea, is just doing semi-scripted stream segments if I ever feel like I need to do something quite detailed, because I need to remember that I'm not trying to be a fucking academic with all the sources and I need to show you exactly what page each thing came from, because it just takes too long to get content out. It's just easier if I do my segment, and then if people want to bugger me for for citations, I can just send them my Obsidian notes. I can just have that pasted in the description, like an Obsidian file. That'll be it. Politics in the main channel, drama on live. No. And the video essay channel will just be for big work that I can work on over a period of time. If you make enough, you could outsource the essays, just record the voiceover. Yeah, but I don't know what poor soul would have to... I'd have to hyperlink every part. It's not impossible, because I was able to do it with Dylan. And sometimes Dylan didn't hyperlink specific quotes, but I just copy-pasted what he was saying into Google. And that alone puts you roughly to the source, because he's just saying something that's already in an article somewhere. Yeah. You made me discover a crossover between Ukraine and Israel-Palestine? Oh, really? You should force people to write effort posts on Reddit with copious citations. I mean, a couple of them already do. I know Jesse Irwin wants to write a whole Reddit effort post on 48 because that's his special interest right now. Has Hassan seen the recent Finkel? It's not even the Finkelstein take is not recent. It's what he said at the time. I don't even know if it's the best dunk, because when he talks about that, he says that Russia had the right to invade Ukraine in the same way that Israel had the right to go into the war in 67 because their security was threatened. But he opposed, I think he still says both of them shouldn't have been done, even though they had the right, which is a dog shit argument, because like last I checked, Ukraine was never amassing troops on the borders or near the borders of Russia and posturing and being rhetorically fucking insane, and hadn't previously invaded Russia and hadn't closed ports to Russia that were like that were recognized as a red line and an act of war. So I don't know. They did close the Crimea thing, but obviously that was after Crimea was annexed, not before. So sorry, guys. You guys don't normally see me. It was a canal. Yeah, okay, sorry. What are canals made of? Water. And where do they go? They go a certain way. It's a waterway. Retard. Fuck you. All right. Did you watch Elon and Don Lemon? I want to watch that as well. Yeah. Hang on. According to Wikipedia, Finkelstein changed his mind about Israel when they thought he rejected socialism. What I want to do is, I don't know where you would even find this. I want to see the parallel between the way that the Soviets spoke about Israel Palestine and how people talk about it now. I wonder if the reason left wingers always default to the Arab narrative on Palestine, I wonder if it's because, but the way that progressives used to be quite pro Israel, like way back in the 50s and 60s, I wonder if that was because people, there is still like a kind of leftover understanding of Palestine support being like that's what the workers support, or that's the pro worker stance, or that's the pro. Uh, it's identical. I can send you lectures. Okay, cool. Because I know in the very early days, left wingers supported Israel, like in the 40s and 50s. Chomsky like led a Zionist organization, all starry-eyed about the one-state solution and the Palestinian and Israeli working class coming together in a single, yeah, all that shit. But I'm also a worker. Good one, Scarlett. That's not what Marxists have their own definitions for everything. Okay, and when they say worker, they don't mean you'd have to get intersectional there because you're a worker, but you're also a colonizer. So that would be difficult for them to get their heads around. And you're a woman. God. What do you think about Chomsky? Um, I think he has some good points, others not so good. Very hit and miss, Chomsky. I think he's a terrible researcher, but at least what I've read about it on politics is that he gets things kind of like, he makes a lot of very strange empirical statements. Posting a link in stream leads. What the fuck is stream leads? Is that stream chat or stream suggestions? Oh. 56 minutes. Okay. And the Elon Don Lemon talk is 1 hour. He believes the Khazar myth. Hmm. Hmm. Should I watch the whole thing or Elon Don Lemon or Soviet anti-Zionism and contemporary left anti-Semitism? That is a very long title, bro. Do I want to watch this? Bro. Please no Elon. Elon's funny as fuck, man. He gets so triggered and he's like all his, I've noticed all the Giga Chad moments. I feel this happens quite frequently now. All the Elon Musk Giga Chad moments are just him being petty, like a child. Fuck knows. Hmm. Hmm. The Soviet Union at one point offered to have a Jewish state in the USSR, but obviously it went nowhere since Stalin was known for mass deportation, starvation, and ethnic cleansings. Yeah. Yeah. Like Finkelstein. Very much like Finkelstein. Hang on. Let's just look at Reddit. That's my video. What are people saying? You know, I lost like 100 subs putting this video up. That's more subs than I've ever lost in one go before. like, and I think it's probably because every now and then when I post a new video on my main channel, the first couple of hours, a bunch of people just unsub, usually like 10 or 20. And I think it's just because it's people who decided they were done with me for like leftist people or whatever. And then they're just like, they just see the notification and then they unsub. As in, I've never pissed people off enough to the point that they actually just go and unsub when I haven't done anything. They start to leave when they see the notification. They're like, oh, not this guy again. And then that's probably how it goes. But yeah, that's the biggest purge I've ever had. 100 people. I've never had one of those 1,000 plus whatever bullshit moments, but yeah. You're officially a social democrat creator right now. Yeah, I'd rather be that. Fuck. I'll still be up for the whole push the boundaries ideas, but like, fuck me. I feel like first of all, Ukraine, and then Israel, Palestine, and all this shit in between has really made me realize how much I took for granted liberal democracies. Like, liberal democracies are actually real, like free speech, free expression, fucking, oh god, the whole like basic id poll, like not essentializing people on racial or national grounds, even if their nationality is quite like problematic. I don't know. The transgenocide discourse was a boiling point. I mean, that was a very specific part of the internet, though. Like a very unique part of the internet. Hmm. Who knows? But yeah, whatever this like new pop far left is, I don't like them. I don't even, for some reason, I don't even think a lot of them are good people. And normally there's not much of an overlap. I don't think there's generally much of an overlap between bad politics and being a bad person. But for some reason, there's just like some very extra special toxicity that goes on amongst those communities that I'm just like, eek. Ooh. No, 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 no. Do you think working with DGG has strained bridges to other communities? Oh, they were all gone anyway. It doesn't take, because these leftist video essayists, and I know how their minds work because I've spoken to them in DMs and shit like that. They are so fucking paranoid. They are so, they're, okay, here's one thing I'll tell you. I'm gonna start opening up a bit more about this stuff because I'm not gonna name drop anyone because that's just unfair. Leftist video essayists know what their audiences are like. They know their audiences are fucking terrifying. Everyone learns it very fucking early. I learned it on my very first stream on my main channel. My very first stream when I had like 19k subs or some shit. And I was watching a Vosh clip because someone sent me a Vosh clip and he was like, he like was talking about me. I was like, oh, that's funny. Vosh is talking about me. And then people in the chat were like, no, 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 turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. We came here for you, not Vosh. We don't like Vosh. And they're like, oh, okay. So I guess we'll, and then I was thinking, oh, so to be business minded, I'd be like, okay, my audience, I don't have many of them. They don't like Vosh very much. I should stay away from Vosh. Okay. And then you start to see what's happening with the internet with people like Destiny and shit like that. Yeah. And I was thinking, that happened to me on the very first stream I ever did. And then when you read comment sections, it's similar. Like if you make a very progressive leaning video essay, say for example, I made one shitting on Winston Churchill, but I also did say, because I wanted to, tell the pro-Churchill people that I'm not fucking, I wanted them to know that I'm not just like a stereotypical like partisan or whatever. So I threw in a few things for good measure and because it's true, for balance, that Churchill did do some good things, right? Like he did actually want to fight the war with the Nazis when plenty of other conservatives were like, no, actually, we kind of like this Hitler guy. Or just like, yeah, so that was a thing. He was very much alone in that decision when it came to the rest of Europe. And that might have very well saved the entire fucking planet. Who knows? Among other variables. But people got really mad at that. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to avoid olive branches to right wing opinions, even if I think some of them are true or like traditional or liberal opinions, whatever. But I know that for video essayists and people who get to be very selective about what they talk about, and people who don't use their Twitters that often, is if they have an opinion that they think is true, but might rock the boat with the far left excesses of their audiences, then they'll just not say it. And I know about that because every time I do something like that, I get one of them in my DMs being like, I didn't think what you said was that crazy. What the people are going mental, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you know. Um, you agree with it, but you're not going to say anything. That's smart, I guess. But yeah, that's what happens. And I don't hold it against anyone who's ever done that to me, like, because at the end of the day, this is quite a precarious job to be in. I don't blame anyone for treading lightly with those communities, because the problem is even if it is just a fringe of the audience, they're also the loudest people. It doesn't take much at all to start having things spreading everywhere. And some people they're committed to this, right? The Bad Empanada drama that I had was very small. He was not a big creator. He has an even smaller committed audience, but they're online all the time. He sends people into his fucking from his Discord out into Twitter and Reddit to do like operations and shit like that. And it didn't take long for loads and loads of people to start going around the internet and telling and spreading the word that Lonerbox guy is like kind of a neoliberal fascist pro-Israel genocide lover, like Palestinian murderer. like, oh, okay. Um, and it didn't take that many people to spread that word. To the point that like a couple of years later, it's all over fucking like Hassan's chat of like 20,000 people and shit. I don't know. So, but the problem is Mike from PA. Yeah, well, but the problem is there are big creators who are quite aware of that. They just don't talk about it. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm not expecting a big turn, but do you think Hassan is? I don't know. I can't get into Hassan's head. Don't know. Actually, I have. I think he's a bit more complex than people make him out to be. I don't know. Um, but I do think there. I don't think this current orthodoxy that we're seeing right now is going to last forever. I think it's a lot of. I think you end up in a point where people are just kind of leading each other at this point. Um, I don't know. Don't know. Chances are Noah Samson is also aware of that, given that he weaseled out of the ban. I don't know if he weaseled out of it though. I don't know if he. I don't know if he got sick or I don't know. But actually, Noah Samson was a really good example of this. You could tell very early on that he was constantly keeping his finger on the pulse of his audience's opinion, right? Because he made one video saying that Vosh was actually all right, that he recommended Vosh in his channel in one of his videos. I think it was like the BreadTube guide or some bullshit, right? Yeah, he said nice things about Vosh, but then he got a lot of backlash for it from the radical, like from the tanky side. So then he decided to do the criticisms of Vosh with like the solving debate. And then he was like, oh, wait, actually, no, I kind of like Vosh. And then he walks back and then he realizes, oh, actually, I get a lot more support shitting on Vosh than I do being nice to him. So here we go. We'll play the side. And then I was, yeah, that's kind of, it was a really interesting way of actually watching someone just getting kind of like pulled back and forth by their audience, informing their opinion by his audience and by also the other left wing audience, which was Vosh's side. Hmm. And the reason I started thinking about this, because every now and then I like to see what the other side is saying. It's always good to do that. You don't want to shadow box. And this dude here, something I found quite interesting, was this Ugopnik dude who made a video about the leftist YouTube pipeline and recommending a bunch of creators. But I'm looking through, because this guy is a big old tanky, right? Like a full-on Soviet-loving, fuck it, whatever, right? But I'm looking here and I'm seeing a few of these people, and because a lot of these people are quite selective with their content, they talk about things that far leftists will agree with, but they don't really sign off on the really, really insane stuff. And there are so many people in here who are probably more ideologically aligned with me than they are with him, than like the deprogram people. And I just think that's really, really interesting because, again, like the amount of people I'm looking at here who, if Ugopnik knew and the far left guys knew what was like actually what even just watched their content, like the content that they have up, and just paid attention to the nuances that they throw in every now and then, they would be called liberals. There are quite a few people in here. I can count at least like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's at least 5 people in there that I can see who, if the right clip compilation was made, they would be, or even if the right clip was grabbed, or the right bad moment, or the right moment went viral, is like they would be seen as liberals. And I don't know, that's just, I just find that quite fascinating. I don't know. But what the fuck am I going to do about it? Probably nothing, because that would mean I don't want to throw people under the bus or whatever, or take them down with me. Happy you're not on the graph. I am on the graph. I'm obviously a tumor, right? I don't know. Are you chewing that drink? I don't know. When I drink smoothies, I just like chewing. I don't know. It has rolled oats in it, though, so yeah. It's not like a perfect liquid. You guys don't normally see me having my breakfast on stream, though. My cum feed. All right. Elon, Don Lemon, or Soviet anti-Zionism. Who is this person? Let's just have it on while I vibe. Your 4 p.m. breakfast, 3:25. I actually made it like a couple of hours ago, but yeah. I don't normally eat breakfast right after I wake up. I tend to take a while. I woke up at noon today, though, so I was a bit late. Anyway. Okay. Did you ever explain why Finkelstein's I don't think Finkelstein's a grifter. No. I think Finkelstein believes what he says. I just think he's insane. All right.
Isabella, good to see you. We look forward to doing that face to face at some point, but right now, thanks to
I won't have time for this. Sorry. Whoops. I just realized. Let's do this. Oh, this is much better.
Welcome to the Don Lemon Show, everyone.
Modern, crisp, polished.
In a minute, I'm going to bring you my conversation with Elon Musk, the one that everyone is talking about.
Everyone's on.
But first, let me tell you a bit about the show. Contrary to what you might have heard, we weren't canceled by X. Yes, after months of begging me, wooing me to offer some exclusive content on his platform, Elon Musk decided to scrap the deal. But our plan is, and always has been, to release this show everywhere, on YouTube, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, just about any place you stream content. Now for my conversation with Elon. As with all my interviews, no restrictions, no ground rules.
Would you be interested in talking to Menachem Begin's grandson in Israel? He's considered a big leftist in Israel, but he admires his grandfather. Why is everyone like this? The fucking cinematic complexity of the average Israeli. Yeah, sure.
Rules, nothing off limits or out of bounds. That is until the interview ended. So what went wrong? I don't know. But my hope is that you learned something about both Elon and me, two people who come from completely different vantage points on almost every single issue. And I challenge you, Elon, to watch the whole interview and tell the world why this isn't what you claim you want on X.
Thank you for inviting us here.
You're welcome.
Tesla headquarters. I'm surprised at how big it is. I've never seen it.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's about 3 times the size of the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And we built it in 16 months. It's the fastest construction project in the United States since World War II.
So I'm here, as you know, I'm on the platform because you say you're a free speech absolutist, right? And there are no conditions.
Yeah.
But you ban
Free
people.
speech is as much as possible within the bounds of the law.
Yeah. So the reason I'm saying that is because there are no conditions on this interview. You said that.
I don't get this cop. For free speech absolutists, is the law just perfect then? Did the American law just happen to fall into the moral fucking pinnacle? That all the things that we would morally agree with banning are banned by law and otherwise no? Feel like you could probably think a bit more. There must be some laws about speech that you disagree with and some that you think should be stretched. Surely?
We'll speak to you for an hour.
Yes.
I don't like sound bites, so I welcome that. So let's get into it. So we're here in Austin. South by Southwest is going on. We're at the Tesla headquarters. You are in the process of moving SpaceX here, I understand?
No. SpaceX has a massive facility in South Texas where we build and launch Starship. And then we have in Bastrop near Austin, we are about to start production at a Starlink, a large Starlink factory for Starlink terminals. But but we're not shutting down any facilities in California.
Listen, we are here as part of a launch of a news interview show that is going to be on X.com. It's coming as a media industry, as you know, is going through a whole lot of changes.
Yeah.
X has also been affected by that. Where do you see X.com's role in the future of news and journalism, Elon?
Well, I think I see the X as it's already the number one source of news in the world. So it is the number one way that people actually are informed about any kind of news, meaning real-time events, is on the X platform, formerly Twitter.
There's no way. What the fuck? Oh, that's scary.
There's nothing even close for real-time news. So we also want to expand upon that, and we have done so with long-form content. So instead of just doing what used to be called tweets, you can now do long-form posts. You can post an entire essay. In fact, you can now post an entire book to the platform. You can do long-form video content, so you can do up to 4-hour video segments. We really want news in whatever form it is, or information, I should say, in whatever form it is, to be available on our platform, whether it's short, long, text, pictures, video, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and some of the stuff that we do, long-form video, interview shows, what have you.
Yeah.
You reached out over the summer and you said, it would be great to have Maddow, Don Lemon, others on the left put on this platform. You receive full support. The digital town square is for all. What do you mean by that?
Well, I just mean that we want to make sure that there are a wide variety of viewpoints, that it's we always have, for example, Tucker Carlson, who most people will view as being on the right, and that's quite a prominent name on the right. We want to have prominent names on the left as well to provide different points of view, as well as centrists. Just basically a wide range of viewpoints on the platform, so users can hear different opinions. They can hear, what's your point of view, what's Tucker's point of view, and and people can make their own decision about what they believe.
You didn't mean that I'm on the left? Did you think that?
I thought you were on the left, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, let's just say I don't know what the left is or the right is, frankly, these days, because things can be quite polarized. But my impression was that you're more likely to be described as on the left than the right. My sense is you're sort of center left. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, did you ever watch me on CNN, or did you watch?
I saw.
Yeah.
Did you say your breakfast isn't at 3 p.m.? So because of my meds and because of just the way I don't feel that hungry as soon as I wake up, I have my breakfast like 3 or 4 hours after waking up sometimes. Yes. Chill. Leave me alone. Get out of my life.
Yeah, not. I saw segments.
Yeah.
But CNN is generally considered left.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Why do I say CNN is generally considered left? I think if you look at any sort of media survey of what is on the left or right, I think they would say, like, for example, Fox is on the right and CNN is on the left.
Yeah. So that's what is it?
Am I missing something here?
Okay. Are you missing something?
I
don't know. I think that when I read that, I said, like many of my critics or detractors, they never really watched me on CNN. They just saw the clips of me either on social media or.
What does Ground News say about CNN? Elon is already a bit awkward.
Loner box, you smarmy cuck bastard.
Thanks for the 249. I really appreciate that, Mark Tech. It says they lean left. That's not surprising, is it? Lean left is very different from left, but high factuality by Wikipedia. Ooh, mixed factuality by Media Bias Fact Check. Wow. Is X on this? No. Is Twitter on this? I didn't think so. Okay.
Or maybe on Fox News or in conservative media,
Yeah.
where it's sort of where I've become a character or a caricature of what I actually am, and it's taken out of context.
Sure. Well, how would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as someone who is I am independent in my thinking,
Okay.
and I vote for people based on the issues and how I feel about it, not necessarily because of political leaning of some sort.
Well, I agree with that approach. I think that's generally how people should take things, which is, I mean, there are a whole sort of set of issues which are sort of somewhat arbitrarily bucketed into right or left.
Yeah.
But I think most citizens would think that they would agree with some things on the left, but not everything, or they agree on some things on the right, but not everything. So that's what I think most people feel, I guess.
How much longer, and maybe the answer is forever, how much longer are we going to have to call it the formerly known as Twitter? I mean, even Prince went back to Prince instead of, is it always going to be X?
It's definitely always going to be X.
So X is going through some changes. I said a lot of media companies are going through some changes. You're in charge of an incredible platform, Elon. How do you feel that's going?
I think it's going pretty well so far. We're seeing record usage. We've added a tremendous amount of functionality. I mentioned that it used to be that you could only do short, text and maybe a picture or something like that, short video. But now you can do long form text, long form video. We've added audio video calling, so you can not just do text DMs, you can do audio video calling. We've improved the algorithm, I think, significantly, and made the system faster and better, and that's reflected in the increased usage.
So let's talk about that, because you said you wanted all points of view, right? It's a digital town square for all.
Yeah.
It's the platform has kind of picked up where some conservative media has left off. That moving to the right, increasingly becoming part of a conservative dialogue, and sometimes even conspiracy theories, right? There was an article recently written about you saying that you, Donald Trump, and X were the most important people or places or whatever icons when it comes to the MAGA movement. Do you agree with that? How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, there are nonsense articles written all the time, and I certainly wouldn't agree with that one. I put it in the nonsense category. So, the objective fact of the matter, in my opinion, was that old Twitter was fundamentally a tool of the far left, and that was really, I think, a lot of it was due to being located in San Francisco, Berkeley, and so it wanted to essentially project the SF Berkeley political dogma worldwide.
You think it was far left?
Yes, I do.
I used to get, I actually got off the platform because I would get so much hate tweets when it was called in, so much hate tweets and just guff from right-wing conspiracy theorists being called everything from, fag to
Sure. Well, it's
nigger
the
to
internet,
everything.
If people will do, I mean, I've been called every name times 1,000.
Yeah. Do you agree that it's right now and that even
No.
it's moved into sort of MAGA
No,
land of
I
conspiracy
don't.
theory?
I certainly don't think it's right. The old school Twitter suspended and suppressed accounts that you'd call on the right 10 times more than they did accounts on the left. And even when they did suspend an account on the left, it was because of arguments between two people on the left. The political donations of old Twitter were 99% Democrat. Does that sound left-wing or right-wing to you?
The Twitter donations?
Yes. When they look at donations from a company, if a company donates literally 99% of all donations are to Democrats, does that strike you as a left-leaning or a right-leaning
Oh, you
company?
mean the company donated. I understand what you're
What I'm
saying.
trying to tell you is that Twitter employees, people at Twitter, their political donations were 99%, literally 99%, to Democrats. That's obviously an extremely left-leaning group.
My question leading into this is about MAGA. And speaking of MAGA, you recently met with Donald Trump in
There's a thing on CNBC about this. But again, would this affect, how much of an effect would this have on a company policy? It must do, even if company policy tries to be as neutral as possible. The employees would still lean, like, even in a subconscious way, right? Netflix are the most liberal, with 98% of the donations going to Democrats. Bro, that's a lot. Netflix. What about is Nvidia? 93% to Democrats. Adobe, 93%. I'm sorry, but isn't this what you get for telling fucking kids not to go to college for the last 30 years? I don't know. Yeah. I feel like you probably need some kind of university education for all these things, right? Netflix, Nvidia, Adobe, IBM. Google. Microsoft. 8515. Okay. Apple. PayPal. Even PayPal, bro. Amazon. Amazing. Facebook, Intel, Broadcom, Oracle. Are there any that are more even Texas Instruments is more okay, Qualcomm? Huh. They didn't list any that are more Republican than Democrat. Okay. Huh.
Florida. What did you guys talk about?
I was at a dinner. I was not dinner. I was at a breakfast at a friend's place, and Donald Trump came by. That's it.
So you didn't go there to meet him?
No, I went to a friend of mine's house and it said Donald Trump's coming by for breakfast. Is that just so you know? Like, okay, fine.
What did you discuss?
I don't. Let's just say he did most of the talking.
What did you say?
The normal things he says. There was nothing particularly groundbreaking or new, but he, President Trump likes to talk.
Sorry, is it not also because aren't most tech companies, is tech not like a very California thing, like a very coastal thing? Like they'd be in blue states, right? Tech companies. Okay.
And so
That's probably a better explanation than the education thing. Because, okay, sorry.
I don't recall him saying anything that he hasn't said publicly. and that was it. It was just a breakfast.
Did he ask you for money?
He didn't.
Did he ask you for a donation?
No,
He didn't.
No.
You said you're not going to donate to any candidate.
that's correct.
Why not?
I think while I'll voice my opinion, I think I don't want to put a thumb on the scale monetarily that is, significant.
Are you going to loan him money to help pay his bills?
No,
Not at all. Pay his legal bills.
I'm not paying his legal bills in any way, shape, or form.
And he did not ask you for money.
And he did not ask me for money.
Are you going to? So you're not going to endorse a candidate?
I may, in the final stretch, endorse a candidate, but I don't know yet. I want to make a considered decision before the election, and if I do decide to endorse a candidate, then I will explain exactly why.
Are you leaning towards anyone?
No.
You're not leaning towards anyone because you've been.
Let me say I'm leaning away from Biden.
You're leaning.
I've made no secret of that.
Are you concerned about losing your security clearance if Biden is reelected? Does that have anything to do with it?
No.
You are leaning away from Biden, but you're not going to endorse anyone. It seems like an endorsement of President Trump because there are only two people who are running now. Nikki,
If you're a Musk fan, like if you're a fan of Musk, you're definitely voting Trump, right? Like almost 100%, no? Unless you're a Musk fan for reasons that have nothing to do with his public persona. Like if you're just into the business decisions or you're into space travel or some shit. Okay.
Haley is out.
I mean, a lot
Biden's
can happen
opponent is out.
between now and the election, so we'll see who, in the final analysis, are the choices for president. And at that point, I may or may not endorse one of the candidates. If I do, I will provide a very detailed explanation of why I am endorsing one or the other.
At that point, might you contribute or donate?
I think it's unlikely.
So you have been posting up a storm, as you always do in the past couple weeks, about the redesign of the Tesla Roadster coming at the end of this year. Are there any kind of updates that you can talk about to expect from your flagship EV? I mean, Tesla stock is down in the last 6 months. What's next for the company?
Oh.
The stocks go up and down, but what really matters is, are we making and delivering great products? The Tesla products are outstanding. Last year, the Tesla Model Y was the best-selling car of any kind in the world. So it was about 1.2 million units. It was the best-selling car despite being, I think, around 50% more expensive than the next best-selling vehicle of any kind, not just electric. So I think that's a testament to the incredible work of the Tesla team.
Yeah.
And we launched the Cybertruck. Obviously, that's being very well received. We have, I think, over 1 million orders for the Cybertruck. It's a really special product. That is, I think the Cybertruck is one of those products that comes along really once in several years, maybe once a decade. A Cybertruck is a once-a-decade product. It is so special, and I think it's our best product.
But everyone improves over time. I mean, Apple, I thought my phone was here, but Apple, the phone got better over time. I'm sure your cars will get better over time. You have been tweeting about the updates in the Roadsters. There's something that we should expect?
Sure. You did mention the Roadster. So, look, I don't want to give away, much more than what I...
Will you do a second thought style review of the Cybertruck? No. What the fuck? Yeah, maybe. Got to fundraise, How long is it to take one of those babies out for the day?
said publicly, except that the Roadster will be a collaboration between SpaceX and Tesla. So, you can...
Why is Lerner not on Twitch? I need to use my Prime. All right, I'll go on Twitch just for you, okay? There you go. Welcome to Twitch, boxies. Wait, why is it still saying offline? Here we go. Yeah, we're on Twitch now. There.
I expect some rockety stuff there.
A flying car?
Maybe.
His laugh is
It's not
so...
out of the question.
It's not quite the tanky laugh, but it's...
I gotta reserve the cool stuff for
it's
the,
there.
when we actually unveil it. But it's gonna be really cool. It's gonna have some rocket technology in it. I think the only way to do something that's cooler than the Cybertruck is to combine SpaceX and Tesla technology to create something that's not even really a car.
Then what would it be?
Something that's never existed before.
I'm getting Jetsons vibes.
Totally
Remember
Jetsons
the
vibes.
Holodomor?
Pete Olsen, thanks for the sub.
May not be aware, like some things that I have said publicly is that it'll do 0 to 60 in under 1 second. So that's by far faster than any sports car that exists.
War crime is my waifu. Thanks for the gifted sub. Holy shit. Damn, Twitch. For some reason, Twitch viewers bring all the bank. I don't know how.
And that's not even the most exciting thing.
Circus, thanks for the sub.
Does it have wings?
No, it does not have big wings, because big wings would be unwieldy on the road.
Does it have propellers?
The
It does
Benny
not
laugh
have
is still
propellers.
there.
Okay. It has wheels.
Does it have wheels? Roadster 20 questions.
Does it have a steering wheel?
Not exactly.
What is it? The Holodomor?
It'll have a
Harry Ziggy, thanks for the sub.
wire yoke, essentially. Like
Are you a one boxer, two boxer? Wow.
Kind of like the way aircraft or modern jets are controlled.
And do you think it's the way of the future that everyone will follow your lead on this?
I don't think anyone will ever make anything like the Roadster that we're going to make.
Let's talk now about SpaceX, Tesla. You got a lot of lawsuits. You've got X.com. You got a lot going on. How do you relax?
Well, I relax. I spend time with my kids, my friends, and I, make somewhat of a nerd technologist. So I like playing video games. So I'll play video games with friends online.
Which one?
Lately, I've been playing Diablo, but I've played almost all the games over the years. A long time ago, I was like semi-pro good at Quake. This is really dating me because we're talking about like 25 years ago.
I don't know video games. I just know that my great nephew loves Fortnite and some other stuff. He's always with the headphones and doing the thing. So that helps you relax, right?
Doing the thing.
So
Yeah. And the nice thing is if you've got friends in different cities and they're playing the same game, you can both go online at the same time and play the game together, even though you're in different cities.
Listen, I'm not asking you anything that.
Do you consider Elon intelligent? I mean, obviously, at some point in his life, he made some pretty big decisions that resulted in his company blowing the fuck up. So, but I think he's the kind of person who it's so hard to tell, because if you apply your intelligence to one or two things, you might be very good at those one or two things. But then because you're very good at those one or two things, you might get a sense of complacency. And then you think everything else you dip your toes into, you're just going to be there by default. Like you've already done the work. And I think that's maybe the vibe Elon gives, if he isn't just lucky for his entire life. That could be the other alternative. But the way that I've never seen him talk in a way that makes him sound impressive at all. No, never. He sounds like a stoner. That's how Elon, to me, sounds like a stoner, the way he talks about things. So, yeah.
That anyone else hasn't asked you about your controversial stuff that you tweet. You post a lot of controversial stuff. Is that considered blowing off steam?
Well, I guess I do enjoy using the platform. I mean, I do call the X platform the PvP, or player versus player platform. So in video games, there's player versus like environment, where you're not playing against other people, and then there's PvP, which is like hardcore. You're actually playing against other people, and
But that's blowing off steam for you.
yeah,
Yes.
it is to some degree, not always. I mean, obviously I use it for to post jokes, to post sometimes trivia, sometimes things that are of great importance.
So you do a lot of it at night, like late at night. So when you're doing this, are you sober when you do it?
Almost
Are
always,
you
yes.
under the influence of anything?
No, I don't drink. I don't really. No, No.
So you got no drink, no
Okay.
smoke, no nothing. I mean, you smoke pot with Rogan,
I had one puff.
Yeah.
I think anyone who smokes pot can tell I don't know how to smoke pot.
but you've admitted that you have a ketamine prescription.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's
Oh.
that for?
Well, I mean, it's pretty private to ask somebody about a medical prescription, you know. But
kind
it's-
of, yeah.
I think it's something I'd say like there are times when I have sort of I don't know, like a negative
Remember
chemical
the
state
Holodomor?
in my brain, like depression. I
Robsy.
guess, you know, or like depression that's not linked to any negative news, and then ketamine is helpful for getting one out of a negative frame of mind.
Well, listen,
So in fact, I generally, obviously I'm not a doctor, but I would say if someone has depression issues, they should consider talking to their doctor about ketamine instead of SSRIs.
listen. I think that
Damn, he's
ketamine
giving medical
and
advice
drug
on the
therapy
platform.
is
Shit.
increasingly becoming more in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Do you think you're doing it under a doctor's care, right?
Yeah, yeah. Literally a prescription from an actual, a real doctor, not like, you know.
Yeah. But do you feel like you ever abuse it?
I don't think so. If you use too much ketamine, you can't really get work done. So I have a lot of work. So I'm typically putting in like, 16-hour days. That's normal for me. And it's rare for me to even take off a weekend day. So I don't really have like, a situation where I can be not mentally acute for an extended period of time. Like I can't really get wasted because I can't get my work done.
So how often do you take it?
Well, it'd be like a small amount once every other week or something like that.
But there's not on the bottle where it says take this dose this many times a week or whatever. If it's
Yeah,
under a
match
doctor's
the dose. And there are several weeks will go by where I don't
He's
use
really
it.
only doing 2-hour days. It feels like 16 on ketamine. To be fair, I think Don Lemon is asking some pretty invasive questions. I don't know if they agreed to this beforehand or anything, but no, fuck me. I mean, if he's fine answering us, whatever. But
You don't use it.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think the what I find ketamine is if you're like literally like a chemical state in your brain that you can't just think yourself out of, then ketamine is helpful for getting you out of a depressive mind state.
You suffer from depression, or you have a depressive mind state? And I asked you as someone who has suffered from depression.
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I have like a case of like extended depression. It's just once in a while I get into a negative sort of chemical mind state. Once in a while, it's not a common thing, but once in a while it does happen.
Where do you think that comes from?
I think it's just genetic, basically.
You think it's just genetic history?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, some people are just wired to be happy all the time. Some are unfortunately wired to be sad a lot of the time. And in my case, I'm generally pretty positive and optimistic. But once in a while, I don't know what happens. There's some, like I said, I think it's just chemical tides in your brain. Once in a while, it's like a brain storm.
Yeah. Do you ever worry that this may get in the way of your government contracts and clearances, and also and Wall Street as well?
Well, from a standpoint of Wall Street, what matters is execution. Are you building value for investors? Tesla is worth about as much as the rest of the car industry combined, from nothing. So that's pretty good. As I mentioned, we had the best-selling car on Earth last year. So from an investor standpoint, if there is something I'm taking, I should keep taking it.
Have you talk about your ketamine use and depression? Have you also have said, and
The reason I should say, the reason I mentioned the ketamine prescription on the X platform was because I thought maybe this is something that could help other people. That's why I mentioned it.
yeah, can we talk about the great replacement theory now? Some of the things that you post, the great
shit.
replacement theory. You claim that Democrats.
I haven't seen the Twitter posts about it, but I know they're about, aren't they? Yeah.
President Biden's immigration plan to open up the border. You said that the president is getting, and Democrats are doing it to get more votes. But undocumented immigrants cannot vote in federal elections, so how is that possible?
Right. Well, you're conflating two things. One is great replacement theory. The other is, which I don't subscribe to that. I'm simply saying that there is an incentive here. If legal immigrants, which I think have a very strong bias to, at least everything I've read, it's a very strong bias to vote Democrat. The more that come into the country, the more they're likely to vote in that direction. But it is, in my view, a simple incentive to increase voters, Democrat voters. And yeah, so the question is like how? So there's a few ways that this works. One is that when the census is done, the census is based on all people in an area, whether they are citizens or not. So if there are a concentration of people who came here illegally in a particular state or in a particular state, that state will actually then get an increased number of House seats. So the House seat apportionment is proportionate to the number of people, not the number of citizens. So the illegals overwhelmingly go to places like California and New York, and if you just look at the math, if you look at the apportionment with and without illegals, I believe California would lose. I believe the blue state, there would be a net loss of blue states of approximately 20 seats in the House. This also applies to the Electoral College. So you say, like, well, this also applies to electing the president, because the electoral votes are also done by apportionment the same way that House seats are done.
But the reason, Elon, the Electoral College is in place is to balance that, is so that doesn't happen. So what you're saying about it is the exact opposite of the reason why the Electoral College is there. The Electoral College at this point, in our history, gives people who are in smaller states and red states much more of an influence over our elections than people who are in blue states, and the majority of the people in this country. That's what the Electoral College does. It actually does the exact opposite of what you're saying. It protects people who are in smaller states and protects people who are in red states.
Well,
The red states, because they tend to be smaller and less populous.
I think that statement is what you said is true, but what I said is also true, which is that if, as is the case, a disproportionate number of legal immigrants go to blue states, they amplify the effect of a blue state vote. And the math, as I understand it, you can research this obviously very easily on there. It's pretty straightforward to research this. But my understanding is that there would be that the Democrats would lose approximately 20 seats in the House if illegals were not counted in the census, and that's also 20 less electoral votes for president. So the illegals absolutely do affect the who controls the House and who controls the presidency. It does not affect the Senate.
Yeah. In blue states, you're talking about. I
Yes.
don't believe that your information on that is right. So listen.
How removing unauthorized immigrants from census statistics could affect House reapportionment. He said 20 seats. How does this even work? Well, the population change with, okay, unauthorized immigrants. The Electoral College is based on census. Okay. Seats. Oh, the different states would have a different number of seats. So California could lose 2 seats instead of 1. Florida would gain 1 instead of 2. Texas would gain 2 instead of 3. $11 more would gain or lose. So the census basically just tells you how many seats a state's going to have. Okay, I got you. Yeah. Okay. It was fixed at 435 following the 1910 census. So illegal immigrants can't vote, but their population numbers can increase the number of seats in a state by 1 or 2 usually. It seems like usually just 1. So red states, well, yeah, the electoral college generally benefits the red states because it overrepresents red states. Yeah. That's why when technically either side can win an election without the popular vote, but it's usually Republicans who do it.
Let's talk more about the Great Replacement, because the first time that you posted on X about this Jewish conspiracy, you ended up
I
apologizing.
didn't call it a conspiracy. I just said that there's a simple matter of incentives. You don't need a conspiracy when you have basic incentives. In my view, there's a basic incentive that's fundamental that for the Democrat Party to foster and usher in a large number of illegals. Yeah. And you don't need a conspiracy in that case because you have a very basic incentive. You could say I'm wrong about that.
You could say that's one incentive, but the other incentive is that they also lose center-right people as well, because there are some people who would leave the Democrats who would over to Republican over immigration. That's why immigration is the Republicans' #1 policy. Why did Biden why did Biden offer to do the border change then, to put that border bill in? It was the Republicans who voted down. And that border agreement would have not been friendly to illegal migrants. They wanted to add border patrol. They wanted to add asylum officers. They wanted to increase the number of detention beds. Oh, God. More immigration judges.
Incentive, but that's my view. I'm not buying into. Buying some great replacement theory. I'm simply saying there appears to be a very clear incentive for Democrats to maximize the number of illegals because it helps them win elections.
I'm talking about the Great Replacement theory is also part of a Jewish conspiracy theory. And when you did the tweet, or you responded to the tweet about that, you ended up apologizing, and which I think is, it's good that you ended up apologizing. You went to...
What the fuck? Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of dialectical hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. I'm deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest shit about Western Jewish populations coming to the disturbing. What the fuck? You have said the actual truth. Oh, God. Maybe this was one of the ketamine days. Lonerbox didn't lie about his airport adventures. The one guy who checks the "Are you a member of a terrorist organization" box in the US visa application form. Illegal migrant from Lebanon told border authorities he's a Hezbollah terrorist and hoped to make a bomb. Bro. Fake news. Fake news. Why is this happening to me?
Apologizing, and which I think is, it's good that you ended up apologizing. You went to Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
Right? So you said you learned your lesson. What did you learn?
That the Holocaust is real.
I said I learned my lesson.
You said you learned your lesson when you apologized, and you said you went to Auschwitz. You saw what.
No, I was.
What is this fucking celebrity ritual where someone does an anti-Semitic tweet and then they go to Auschwitz and then they're like, "I'm a changed man." Like, fucking hell, bro. Is there not still a bit of questions to be asked about as a fucking adult? Why the fuck you had to go to Auschwitz to figure... You had to go through like the ultimate trial and error. Who came up with this ritual? Why is this a thing?
Already aware of these things. And the nature of my comment that really inflamed people, what I was trying to say, and I did very quickly clarify, this is what I'm saying, is that a number of prominent Jewish philanthropists fund groups that they should really take a closer look at funding, because some of the groups they fund, I think, are anti-Semitic.
Yeah. Do you understand the connection between the two? There's a connection between, you said Democrats, the Great Replacement theory, but when it comes to the actual Great Replacement theory, originally it was started about Jewish people, as you said, flooding in the country, and then now people are using it for Democrats, saying the same thing about Democrats. Flooding.
In my view, it's a simple matter of incentives.
Yeah.
I actually don't see an incentive for Jewish people to want to have legal immigration. I don't think there is such an incentive.
Yeah. The Great Replacement theory is a neo-Nazi trope. It's in the neo-Nazi manifesto. It's in the Turner Diaries. It's referenced by the Buffalo mass shooter in his manifesto, where 10 people, black people, were murdered in Buffalo. There's the actual title of the Christchurch shooters manifesto. 51 people in the Muslim mosque were murdered. 23 people murdered in El Paso.
What was the name of the guy Lawrence Southern got the Great Replacement theory from? It was a guy called Renaud Camus, wasn't it? Yeah, Renaud Camus.
By a shooter who used the same language that you use in that manifesto when you say Hispanic invasion. Is that not?
I didn't say an Hispanic invasion.
You quoted a tweet that called it a Hispanic invasion.
If I quote something, it doesn't mean I agree with everything in it. It's just something that I think this is something worth people should consider.
Why would you quote something that you didn't believe?
Because anything I quote is going to have a whole range of statements. Doesn't mean I agree with everything in it.
Do you think if you moderated yourself,
What did he say in the quote?
or if there was better content moderation on the platform, that you wouldn't have to answer these questions from reporters about the Great Replacement theory as it relates to
I don't have to
Democrats,
answer these
the
questions.
Great Replacement theory as it relates to Jewish people? Do you think that?
I don't have to answer questions from reporters. Don, the only reason I'm doing this interview is because you're on the X platform and you asked for it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I would not do this interview.
So you don't think do you think that you wouldn't get in trouble, or you wouldn't be criticized for these things?
I'm
or that
criticized constantly. I could care less.
You don't care?
No, I don't.
Why
care.
not?
I don't think people should care what the media thinks about them. They're terrible judges of character.
As a guy with, I feel like if you have a business, you would care. To be fair, Elon does care what the media thinks about him. He wants people to think that he's this like renegade, outcast, like thinks outside the box. That's what the impression that he wants to be cultivating. Yes, he wants to look like the alternative. Yeah.
Someone who has one of the biggest social media and biggest information platforms in the world, you don't care? You don't think that you have any X.com, or you have any responsibility to the truth or moderating the platform?
You're conflating the truth with the media, and I think the media is not truthful.
Well, not with just the media. I mean, just the truth in general.
I care about the truth very much. That's why we have, for example, community notes on the X system, where in order for a community note to surface and provide corrective information about what somebody posts, and my posts are equally subject to this. I've been community noted many times. In order for a community note to surface, people who have historically disagreed must agree in order for a community note to surface. And all of the code for community notes is open source. All of the data is open source, so you can completely recreate it from scratch. The way to build trust is transparency.
I have noticed community notes. I think that you are right about that, and I do think community notes are helpful. I think
it's a good feature.
Type of content moderation, I do think that's helpful. You recently called content moderation, though, a digital chastity belt. Do you think that you believe that X and you have some responsibility to moderate hate speech on the platform?
I think we have a responsibility to adhere to the law, and we have a responsibility to be transparent about when things are shown, why they're shown. That's why we open source our algorithm. I think once you start going beyond the law, now you're putting your thumb on the scale. And we don't want to put our thumb on the scale.
It doesn't concern you that hate speech has gone. Research shows that it's gone up on the platform since you took over. That's not concerning to you?
I believe that is false. In fact, the research that I've seen says it went down.
The study from the Institute of Strategic Dialogue found that anti-Semitic tweets doubled from June 22 to February 2023. One study reported that as many as 86% of the posts reported for hateful content remained up after being reported. hate speech on the platform is up.
So what they will typically do is they will count the number of posts, but not count the number of views. So what matters is, was that post given high visibility, or what did like one person see it? And if you look at the number of views of how many times was hate content viewed on our platform, it is down substantially.
Yeah. Well, that's not was what the study shows. And you said you like transparency. I'm going to show you this. And
Don, you can get a study that will tell you whatever you want.
But these are just a handful of extremely. You look at those anti-Semitic and racist tropes and tweets, and as of this morning, they're still on X.
Bro.
And from your own content policy, these posts should have been deleted. So why haven't they been deleted? Why are they still there? Did you?
We delete things if they are illegal.
But these have been up there for a while.
Are they illegal?
They're not illegal, but they're hateful, and they can lead to violence. As I just read to you, the shooters, in all of these mass shootings, attributed social media to radicalizing.
So Don, you love censorship, is what you're saying?
No, I don't love censorship.
Then why
There's
why
the
you
clip.
I believe in
Let's go.
moderation, but I don't believe in
censorship? Moderation is a propaganda word for censorship.
But don't you think free speech is one thing, right? Or not,
Look, if
not
something's
censorship?
illegal, we're going to take it down. If it's not illegal, then we're putting our thumb on the scale and we're being censors.
You're putting your thumb on the scale for moderating hate speech. I mean, you don't put out child pornography. That's not.
It's illegal.
Some people would say that's considered censorship. I'm just saying, you.
No, I literally, Don, you're not.
Oh, no.
I literally said, if something is legal, okay.
He hasn't played the lolly card. Obviously, child porn, like actual child porn, is illegal. But lolly, I don't think lolly it would be illegal on Twitter, would it? Or is it illegal in America? Wow.
Well, obviously,
I can't. The First Amendment, surely. There's no way it's illegal.
Okay.
But if it is not legal,
Is doxing legal? Yeah, it is. Yeah.
the laws in this country are put forward by the citizens. We're a democracy. If those laws are put in place by the people, we adhere to those laws.
Okay, I
And we adhere to the
agree.
laws of others. If you go beyond the law, you're actually going beyond the will of the people.
Okay, agreed with the law. But if you are doing something that promotes hate and violence and ultimately leads to killing, you don't feel you have any responsibility not to do that? When the people who are doing it
I think the
admittedly are
mainstream media
saying
there's articles all the time that lead to violence and killing. Don't they? Shouldn't they? Like you're applying a differential standard to.
But that would never be in mainstream media. These types of images, that type of language, those things would never be. We'd never, when I was in mainstream media, we'd never promote things that would be anti-Semitic. We would never promote things that would.
Anti-Semitic either.
Did you not see those?
You said promote. If content is on the platform, that doesn't mean we promote it.
But that wouldn't be on a platform for mainstream media at all.
No, but you can think of that. That's because the mainstream media has like, whatever, 20 articles a day. We have 500 million posts a day.
Okay,
500
understood.
million.
Does it bother you? How do you feel about that when you see it?
I obviously disagree with that. I think it's not good at all. It's terrible.
But you don't want to get rid of it on the platform, or at least moderate it.
The rules. What you're suggesting is censorship that goes beyond the law. And what I'm saying is, that we, I guess, have a disagreement, because I do not believe in censorship that goes beyond the law, and you do. We have a difference of opinion in that regard.
I understand that, but these are your own rules on your own platform. These go against the rules on your platform. That's why I'm asking you. If you said, listen, we allow everything, but that's not what your content rules say, and that's why I'm asking you, why are they still there? Your own content policy. That's why I'm asking you that, not because.
Which part of our content policy says that we should delete these things?
Your content policy talks about hate speech.
Yes, we don't promote hate speech.
And so you don't consider that hate speech?
I guess you're not understanding what I'm saying. There's if there's you can find you can sign up right now and do 100 things that are hateful, but if nobody reads it, it doesn't matter. So you can think of X as being
I think Don Lemon needs to make a better argument than saying just hate speech, because hate speech means so many, it means different things to different people. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a bit of a, it's not the best argument. You need to actually demonstrate why a platform should moderate it. And then you can get into questions about the idea that that if you give too much freedom to a particular group of extremists, then the whole purpose of people who are those extremists is to use their freedom to compromise other people's freedom. So the problem with having hate speech on your platform is that racists and bigots will make it their mission to make sure that ethnic minorities don't want to be on the platform. And when minorities don't want to be on the platform, well, then they leave. So there are certain groups and certain behaviors that make you basically, that force you to choose, right? It's like if you I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to think about an example. It's like I'm trying to think. Imagine if there was like a nudist beach, right? There's like a nudist beach, but then some people take nude beach as a fucking green light to go to the beach and start fucking and doing all kinds of like depraved shit with like scat or whatever. Well, then like you're opening the door to like a freedom of people to go there and express themselves, and they feel like that's how they want to be at the beach. But then if you extend that freedom too much and you don't ban the excesses, then no one's going to want to go, right? Like that's the idea. I'm trying to think of it's like the same issue with fuck, what was that series? Why is this your example? I'm just thinking off the top of my head. That's one example. Scott's an example of depraved shit, Borg. That's why. That's the kind of thing that if people start doing that at the nude beach, then no one would want to go to the nude beach. Okay? Yeah, the Freedom Bar. The Freedom Bar and It's Always Sunny. That's the one I've forgotten. I've completely forgotten that example. Yeah, the Freedom Bar, when they're like, this is the no rules bar. This is American no rules bar. And at first it's awesome because it's just full of like spring breakers and people taking their tops off and shit like that. But because it's the Freedom Bar, then the weird like incest family comes in and there's like a fucking gambling den at the bottom with like an Asian gambling den. And then suddenly the people don't want to let loose in this bar anymore because it's really uncomfortable. So they leave. So you're like, you have to have rules. Yeah. Thorpe. Yeah.
It's much like the internet. It's not.
Oh, they're playing Russian roulette. Oh god, I love that series is so good. It took me like 3 watches of bits of that series to actually realize how good it was. Fuck. Anyway,
it's some tiny publication with like 20 articles a day. It's 500 million.
But everyone has the opportunity to read it, Elon.
I think everyone has the opportunity to read the internet. Or you said it's suggesting we should.
Or like fucking Woodstock '99, or was there like the Jim Morrison incident in one of his gigs where he was basically trying to egg on the crowd to do whatever they wanted? He was like, "This is your moment to let loose. Like, do whatever you want." And obviously, people started fighting, and like I think there might have been like rapes and shit like that. And then you're like, okay, well, suddenly. Now no one wants to go to this thing, right? Yeah, now no one wants to be there. Or like, yeah, Woodstock '99 was a good example as well of where it was just too. There wasn't really considered a limit on what was acceptable to do there. So you have a bunch of people who are just like, oh, looking up for a good time and all that shit, and just trying to get away with all the things they couldn't get away with in a conventional place. But then obviously for the problem is for some people, they want to act in ways that actually make people unable to exercise that freedom. Yeah.
Shut down the internet?
No, but you don't own the internet. I'm asking you about you and your responsibility and your platform. And so I see how you feel now. You don't agree. We don't agree on this.
Yes, you want censorship and I don't.
No, I don't want censorship.
Yes, you do.
No, I want responsibility. I think there.
You desperately want censorship.
No, if I want a
You
censorship,
want censorship.
You could just say some censorship is fine because at one point the illegal things, the things that we censor by the law, that is a form of censorship. It's just a form of censorship that society has agreed is acceptable.
so bad you can taste it.
no, that's not true. It's not true. I think that there's right and wrong. And I think
therefore
that,
you want censorship.
and I think that when you have a platform that's as big as
Why are
yours,
these guys so bad at arguing? Why are they so bad at arguing? I don't know. Fuck, you could have such an interesting discussion about this, about how do we decide, like, should a platform just be subject to the law? Because we don't agree with that for other parts of life, right? We don't think a theater or a stage or even the town square necessarily is just the same as what's acceptable by law. We don't think that the rules of a house or like a public event are the same as just the law. You can have rules, you can ban certain behaviors. But for a social media platform, how do we make those decisions?
as powerful as yours and as influential as yours, and you are a person of consequence to the world with what you do, that there is a certain responsibility that goes along with what you have on your platform and what you put out to the world. And I think that's important. You don't see that responsibility.
I think we have a responsibility to adhere to the law, and if people want the law changed, they should talk to their elected representative and get the law changed.
Actually, the town square is a public space and it is limited only by the law. No, Bill Bradley, you're absolutely wrong. Because in the town square, for example, in Speaker's Corner in London, there used to be a lot of Islamic hate preachers there, but they would preach in a very euphemistic way that didn't actually break the law. It had to become determined later on that there were certain people and certain organizations that would, regardless of whether their speech was like lawful or not, every time they went there, they would basically be there to cause trouble, right? This is like Tommy Robinson, for example, is like he would, because every time he goes to Speaker's Corner or every time he does a public event, it can be called the free speech family event. That's what he calls it. Like, he calls it family protest. But he goes there and it's just a bunch of fucking pissed, baldy, pink-skinned, like topless English alcoholics. And all they want to do is fight brown people. Like, technically, there's nothing illegal about the organization or the speeches or anything, but that you still need to introduce some kind of measure because what happens in the town square, it's more nuanced. The way that speech can, the consequences of speech are, even if they're completely legal and even if they're very euphemistic, can still be 100% predictable.
Changed, and then we will adhere to the law.
Okay.
But if you want us to go beyond the law, that is us deciding to be censors.
So,
And I'm against censorship. I'm in favor of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And freedom of speech only is relevant when people you don't like say things you don't like. Otherwise, it has no meaning.
but I do think that there should be guardrails, and I believe in free speech as much as you. I would
No, you
fight. I don't disagree. I don't agree with a lot of what you put out on social media, but I will fight for your right to be able to say it.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about diversity, equity, and
What a bore! I think Elon won that debate basically because Don Lemon has not introduced the reason. If you want to say I'm as free speech as you, but I want to ban more things, you need to actually explain how that works. You need to explain how the things that Don Lemon wants to ban will actually mean that other people, maybe more vulnerable, like minorities, will have more rights to speak instead. And that's actually just a choice you're making. But he just didn't even make the argument. He just said it. Eh, God.
inclusion. All right. That's been a target of yours lately on X. There was a repost of Ben Shapiro that you claim that DEI is killing people. Specifically, you point to medicine. You claim that DEI programs are putting people at risk. Do you really believe this to be true? And what evidence do you have to support it?
What I was referring to there was that if we lower the standards for doctors, such so that they, if the test for a doctor is lowered, then the probability of them making a mistake and killing someone is obviously going to be higher.
Wait, say that again. I'm not sure I understand what you said. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yes, if the standards for passing medical exams and becoming a doctor, or especially something like a surgeon, if the standards are lowered, then the probability that the students will make mistake is higher. They're making mistakes in their exam. They may make mistakes with people, and that may result in people dying.
What evidence do you have, though, that they're lowering the standards? There's no evidence of that.
I believe there is.
There's no evidence of that, Elon. What is the evidence?
I believe they have literally lowered the standards at Duke University, and that is what the article was referring to.
There's no
Are you
evidence
saying they
of
have
that.
not lowered the standards?
There's no evidence about lowering standards, and I think that there is.
I believe that is a false statement you're making.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I think
the
that-
interesting thing is,
I don't care about this. Let's go to trans rights and the woke mind virus because I care so much about that. Let's go.
I did not.
Let's talk about trans rights and the woke mind virus, because you've talked about that a lot. You're right about that a lot on the thing. You have been deeply outspoken about the issue of trans rights. You posted trans rights. You posted that pronouns and bio mean the woke mind virus ate your brain. Do you know what the term woke actually means?
It's come to mean a lot of things.
What it actually
he doesn't.
originally
He
it was
doesn't
meant
know.
to mean.
That's
It's just
what
being
you say
aware
when
of.
you. That's what you say when you don't know. Well, it means all sorts of things. Unless you follow up by saying some of the kinds of things as examples. Okay.
Of inequities in society and being aware of facts and history.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think being aware of inequities in society is fine, of course, but trying to blame everything on trying to make everything a race issue is, I think,
That's not what. Okay, woke. The thing with woke is it actually is a good thing. It's good to be aware of different circumstances that different social groups can face. It's good to be aware of the different obstacles that are faced in life by ethnic minorities, or it's good to be aware about the trans experience. It's good to be aware of the gay experience. It's good to be aware because it helps you be aware of maybe like if you're talking to someone, which questions to ask and which ones not to, or not to fall into stereotyping. It's that's what, or even for policy. But obviously, it's kind of like it's gone a bit further than that, I guess. Yeah. All right.
divisive and corrosive to society.
Even as it relates to trans issues, which is what I'm.
Yeah, race or gender or whatever.
You think that
Alright,
society
sorry.
blames everything on racism now?
It blames a lot of things on it, and yeah,
Woke is when you
You think that's
blame everything on
unfair?
Like, they
racism.
kind of did
Yeah.
it. They kind of did.
Why?
Look
What the fuck?
I think we should not make this a constant subject. I think we need to move on. I think we just treat people like people.
Wow.
You don't agree that this country was founded on racism and founded on slavery and in many ways inequities
Okay.
that still continue on to this day?
I think every country at that time, and I think even today, was extremely racist. Every country, and obviously slavery was present in about half of this country, and was not present in the north. There was racism for sure, but I think we want to look to the future rather than the past, and instead of engaging in
Remember the Holodomor?
constant
Bjorn, thanks for the sub. Really appreciate that.
rehashing of the past, because in fact, if you look at history, if you study history broadly, everyone was a slave. Everyone.
Yeah,
See, that's not a very woke thing to say. Obviously, if you're talking, especially about America, slavery was very much a African thing, as in like it was the African American experience. So if your answer to slavery is to suddenly, within less than 60 seconds, to go, oh, but everyone was a slave at some point. I'm like, bro, come on. Okay.
yes. Well, not everyone was a slave.
No,
but,
everyone was a slave.
okay, but
We are all descended from slaves.
yeah, Well,
All of us.
yeah.
Yeah, but some of us are descended from like slavery about 2 or 3 or 4,000 years ago, as opposed to 200. I think that kind of matters, right?
So,
It's just a question of when. Was it more recent or less recent? That's it.
right.
So
But that
what
matters,
future
no?
do we want?
But we are-
Is this something we want to make a part of our constant dialogue?
Also, there was slavery in the North. I don't know what the fuck he's saying about half the country, right? Before the Civil War, there was slavery in the North, just not as much. Okay.
dialogue forever, or do we want to say, like, let's just move on and treat everyone, according to just who they are as an individual?
I agree with you with that. That's the ideal. But what the evidence shows is that that's not what's actually in practice.
I think we're doing better than anywhere else.
That's true. I agree with that. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean a lot to a whole lot of people who aren't able to take advantage of the opportunities that you were able to take advantage of, simply because the color of your skin.
What advantages did my color of my skin give me?
Well, there's an ease that you have in society that many people of color don't. You were able to come to this country voluntarily. There are many people who were not able to come to the country voluntarily. There are people who came here
it was
as
very difficult
slaves.
for me to come here.
And there is a legacy of slavery that still continues on. There's a legacy of racism that still continues on in this country. That's undeniable.
Well, if we keep talking about it nonstop, it will never go away.
Hang on, wait. Did I just have a... trying to remember what Elon Musk's trajectory. Born in 1971. He was born in South Africa. He grew up in apartheid, bro. He grew up to a wealthy family in apartheid South Africa. What was the question there?
And there's a legacy of racism that still continues on in this country. That's undeniable.
Well, if we keep talking about it nonstop, it will never go away. If we keep making that the central thing, it will never go away.
Why do you believe that?
He's Morgan Freeman.
I think I'm just making a simple statement of fact. So I think we want to get away from making everything a race or a gender or whatever issue, and just treat people like individuals.
Do you have any desire to understand what many people of color and even trans people, how they feel about this country and how they're treated in this country? If they say and they believe that they are treated a certain way in this country, why don't you believe them?
You cannot have a situation where someone is a self-described victim, and they just get to be that because that's how they feel.
I think that does happen in some cases, but not all cases. And I think that not understanding the history of the country, I think, is a real shame. Look,
We should understand the history of the country and other countries.
I've had incredible opportunities as a person of color.
Right.
But I've also
You're doing very well.
But I've also been discriminated against, and I know that I have. And I know that that's real. And for someone to say that that isn't happening, I should just move forward and not think about that and ignore the past, is insulting.
I'm not saying it. Don, you keep putting words in my mouth. I'm not saying it's
I didn't say that you
happening.
said
I'm
it.
saying that we want to. We as a country should move beyond questions of race and gender, and we should treat people like individuals and base our opinions on them on the,
Okay, so then you would ask, who is to blame for the conversation continuing? Because what happens, because it seems to me that Elon sees he seems to see a lot of minorities in America complaining. There's two explanations to that. One is that for some reason, those minorities have something wrong with them, like they're paranoid or they've got the woke mind virus, or it's because they're aware of something that is still there, that's coming from the other end, from the people who are bigoted against minorities. But he seems to only want to talk about the minorities complain. It's really strange.
their character and their skills.
I don't think that anyone will disagree with that.
Exactly.
All I'm saying is that that's not happening and is not equal for everyone. that those opportunities don't happen for everyone. And I am a living example that they don't. I know that they don't because I live it.
Isn't Don Lemon like a really big name? Why is he dragging this so badly? Like,
You've been incredibly successful.
I have been,
And I
in
think-
spite of it all. But I know what I know. I've experienced what I've experienced. You haven't done that. And I cannot, I don't know what it's like to be from South Africa. I don't know what it's like to be a white man. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a Latino person. I don't know that. So I wouldn't speak for them and just say, you need to move on. That's not for me to say. I believe that it would be great if the country could live up to that ideal. You think that everyone has the same opportunities in America, regardless of their background and ethnicity. Do you agree?
No, I don't think everyone has the same opportunities.
Okay. So
people misuse their minority card, so it's hard to trust sometimes. I don't know. I think if someone's misusing the minority, it's usually quite clear, right? It's usually really obvious that, for at least when we see because every time there's a viral story about someone using their minority card, it's always some dumb shit like a fucking like some fucking I don't even know, just like it's like those videos that right wingers always like to post. So like say there's like a video of like a black woman punches a white woman in the face, but then the white woman punches back, and then the black person punches back, and then the white woman cries, and then she's like, look at those white women tears, and it's like, okay, come on, like what's going on here? But it doesn't make it that difficult. Those kind of things don't complicate the issue all that much. Like when you were talking about policies and you're talking about racial inequalities in the education system, especially in America, or with the issues with redlining and how a lot of the solutions to redlining from the past have not really kept up with the present day. Because I think one of the big solutions to redlining was say that if you have a branch in a certain community, if you have a branch in a certain community, you have to be able to lend. You have to lend to people in those community, like if they pass the thing, right? But now that doesn't really work because some people might have bank accounts, but their bank doesn't actually have a branch in that area, so there can still be redlining can happen in that way, and like discriminatory lending can happen in that way as well. Yeah, I don't know. That's like one example, but I don't really know if conversations about fucking people misusing their race card really helps, like complicates that too much. Yeah, Bite Karen. Because Bite Karen was accused of weaponizing her white tears when she was being harassed, it seemed. Like, okay, silly.
when you talk about, let's talk about trans rights. When you decided to talk about the trans rights movement, you said that it was a woke mind virus. Why do you believe the trans rights movement is a woke mind virus? Whoa. What do you mean by woke mind virus?
Uh-oh.
Woke mind virus is when you stop caring about people's skills and their integrity, and you start focusing instead on gender.
People get loans online. No, I know people get loans online now, but that's not what I'm saying, you dickhead. Like, what I'm saying is that the redlining laws that got around it in the past don't work for now for that reason. Because the 1977 law against discriminatory lending was that banks were obligated to lend to low-income people in neighborhoods where the bank had a branch. That's kind of out of date now because banks might have have people who have accounts all over a community, but they don't actually have a physical branch there because of the internet. And the problem is that means is that they're obligated to lend to low-income people in their neighborhoods, but they don't have the same obligation to lend to people who might be in a neighborhood that they have bank accounts with, but they don't have a branch there. And that's why that's one of the Democrat policies right now is to have a new law that goes into effect that it strengthens the requirements on banks to lend to lower income communities where there's like if they have like a concentration of mortgages and loans. So, because apparently, I think one of the stats that came out was that the racial homeownership gap is actually higher today than it was in the 80s. So, yeah. Anyway.
and race and other things that are different from that. I think the woke mind virus is fundamentally racist, fundamentally sexist, and fundamentally evil.
Wow.
Okay.
And we've got a little bit more time, so
Yeah.
you choose your question.
Okay.
carefully.
So, okay. Thank you for that.
The
but-
problem is like if someone says that, like it might be agreeable depending on what the woke mind virus is, but it's just you have to define what it is. You could say that the woke mind virus is when people actually just utilize woke ideas or left-wing ideas as an excuse to be bigoted or toxic or whatever, and that probably is possible, but I just don't know. You'd have to actually go into that. I don't know if that's what he means by the woke mind virus. If he's saying pronouns in bio, that's probably a stretch. I don't think pronouns in bio necessarily means that you're going to be a toxic leftoid. I don't know. Pronouns in bio either means usually it means one of two things. It can just mean you're trans, because they tend to put pronouns in bio, or it means you're like a cis person trying to support the trans people. Like, It also might mean you're completely insane, but who knows?
I would appreciate you
You think cis is a
answering
slur?
these. I think it's important that we're doing this. I think it's important to the world to hear this, especially what's going on in our country. The reason I ask you, listen, there are a whole lot of things that people maybe have questions about when it comes to transgender people. Even people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community have questions about that. But if you are a free speech absolutist, right, and that is part of the First Amendment, also the freedom of expression falls under that First Amendment as well. So why can't people choose to identify with the gender that they feel comfortable with, or with use a pronoun? Isn't that part of freedom of expression?
Well, they can, but people are also free to call them a man. Yeah, that's probably that's what I feel like that's what Elon's going to say, but let's go.
I guess no, they can ask others to do whatever they feel. They can ask others to do anything. It's a different question whether they mandate that others do it.
Ah, wow.
Okay.
What an
Let's-
amazing conversation. I never, oh God.
Dude, let's talk more about free speech and for advertisers, right? Because all this
Oh, okay,
controversy,
let's just move on.
I believe,
Wow.
as you know, has made X less appealing to advertisers. About half of them have left the platform. You call advertisers that left X.com. You said they were oppressors. You've even gone as far as saying it publicly that they can go F themselves or go fuck themselves.
If they're going to force censorship on the company before advertising, then obviously I find that unacceptable.
You find it unacceptable. Why is that not a form of free speech? They are free to advertise where they want. They're not beholden to. They're not obligated to
Well, that's a
advertise
reason.
on X.com.
Right.
So, how is that not free speech?
That's whereas the other platforms will censor on behalf of advertisers, the X platform will not.
Okay. So, but you think you don't think it's okay for them not to advertise with or have their content or their advertisement next to something that is anti-Semitic or
That is a different question. You can absolutely choose where next to which content do you want your advertiser to appear. Absolutely, of course, and we do.
Holy shit, 1,000 viewers on YouTube, eh? Welcome back, babies. Like the stream, it didn't cost you anything. Wow, thanks for being here. I like you guys. Wow.
We have, I think, very good ad placement controls in this regard.
Yeah. So you said if they kill the company, it's them. But doesn't the buck stop with you?
The
I mean,
buck.
you're
John, I have to say, choose your question carefully. There's 5 minutes left.
okay, but so
Is this
same,
the question you want to ask?
same question is you said that they are killing the company, but you're the
Crush
head of
the like
company.
button.
The buck doesn't stop with you.
I acquired X in order to preserve freedom of speech in America, the First Amendment, and I'm going to stick to that. And if that means making less money, so be it.
So I have to be, listen, I'm just being honest, right? I'm not trying to get you or anything. I was just surprised that you would blame other people for killing the company. I mean, you're the I mean, when you say the buck stops with the president of the United States, regardless of what happens, right? So, why would that question upset you? You seem upset by it, are you?
I think you.
And I'm not trying to upset you.
Well, you are upsetting me because the way you're phrasing questions, I think, is not cogent.
It's not what?
Not cogent.
Cogent.
Yes.
Go ahead.
If given a choice where an advertiser is saying like you have to censor all this content on the platform, irrespective of where their advertising appears, then our answer will be like, look, you can choose where you want your advertising, what you want your advertising to appear next to, but you can't insist on censorship of the entire platform. And if you insist on censorship of the entire platform, even where your advertising doesn't appear, then obviously we will not want them as an advertiser.
So what would you say to advertisers who have left the platform or who are considering coming back or not coming back? What would you like to say to them?
Well, first of all,
Go fuck yourself.
almost all of our
Come on,
advertisers
be
are
strong,
coming back
Musk.
to the platform. So it's a very short list of advertisers who are not coming back to the platform. And our advertising revenue is rising rapidly. And our subscription revenue is rising rapidly. And I feel very optimistic about the future of the X platform.
Okay. Listen, I'm not meaning to offend you. You're an intense person. Where does that intensity come from?
Drugs.
I was born that way. And I had a tough childhood.
You did?
So, yeah.
How so?
Right, Walter Isaacson goes into it in the book, and we only have a couple minutes left, so
All right.
too long to describe. So the one or two questions I can do, and then we'll have to call it.
Right. Okay. Again, I don't mean to upset you. Why are you just...
No,
Are you mad?
I have a whole room full of people waiting to meet with me,
Okay.
so we're just going over time.
Okay. All right. I understand that.
God, he's so irritable.
When you talk about, you said you were born that way. Is that, did you think that the way that you see the world has to do with your relationship with anyone, perhaps your father or someone in your family?
I think we're all affected by the people we grow up with. My aspiration is to do whatever it takes to extend consciousness into the future. That's my goal. To make life multiplanetary as part of extending consciousness into the future.
Have the past few years, and considering everything that's gone on, has it been difficult for you and your family life?
It's been okay.
So then, how do you see your legacy, Elon? How do you see how people see you in the...
First of all, I say that if I died knowing that I did what was right or did my best to do what was right,
God, it's
and
so
even if in the history
boring.
books they said I did wrong, I would still feel okay about that. I care about the reality of goodness, not the perception of it.
Oh.
I think we should view civilization as tenuous, as fragile. If you do study history broadly, you'll see that there's a rise and fall to civilizations. They don't always go up. So we should do everything we possibly can to preserve and extend civilization as we know it.
Wow.
And improve it. To become more enlightened over time. And we therefore want to address civilizational risks. We want to make sure that we don't have, for example, demographic collapse, which is the case in a lot of countries, just very low growth rate. We want to avoid World War III, anything that is a civilizational risk. That's what I care about.
Birth rate collapse, and then what else? World War III. Don't forget World War III, guys. Wow.
Civilizational risks. How do we extend consciousness into the future such that we are able to...
He's really not disowning that great replacement shit, is he?
...better understand the nature of reality.
Yeah.
That's what I care about. That's my motivation.
I know you have to go. If you'll just give me, I'll do a rapid fire thing here. Is there anything that you would change about anything that you've done in your life, in the past or recently?
I've made many mistakes over the years. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and fix them, but I don't have a time machine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate
that's
it.
nice.
Thank you so much.
So that's it. And as Elon would say, you be the judge.
Okay. Cute. Fun. Banger. Kind of boring. Okay. Nice. But I liked it when Elon got triggered. Okay. I am weak. And that was fun. What is genocide by the majority report? Uh-oh. 11. Fuck. I'm supposed to do. I want to do this segment on comparing Trump and Biden on Israel Palestine, but I'm very much 50-50 on whether it's going to be addressed to left-leaning people who are pro-Palestine who don't want to vote Biden. But I know it doesn't matter how much of a case I can build. It doesn't matter how much material harm I can show between the two guys, because the default response of the people I'm trying to reach is, oh, you want me to get out and vote for genocide light? Fuck you! I'm like, so do I need to actually explain why that's a retarded thing to say, or do I just present the case and just see what happens and not have to? Because if I address the genocide light thing, that's going to be a 10-minute extra part talking about genocide. And I'm like, Or unilateral ceasefire, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of how I want to start it. Or if I just compare, if I say, here are the facts. Let's go facts. Because if I go for the genocide thing, I'm going to have to... it's going to take too long. I just want to be like, here are the differences, okay? Yeah, we're just going to do the facts. Okay. Okay. I feel comfortable saying we're just going to do the facts. And I think I'm going to do the peace process part before the war conduct part. I think that makes more sense. Right? How do I swap these two parts around? Okay. I would vote Putin over Hitler. The problem is I don't like making that argument, though, because the choice is actually not even closely analogous to Putin versus Hitler. It's just that people are wanting things that an American president just can't do, or maybe even shouldn't do. I don't know. But yeah, I know, like, because obviously if you just say, here's why you should, like, let's assume you're correct. Let's say we are just choosing a lesser genocide and 10,000 people might survive if Biden's in as opposed to Trump. Like, you can say that, but it's just not a good argument. It's like, would you do that yourselves? I'm sorry. If you're in like fucking Nazi Germany, 1939 and shit, and the choice is between, isn't there the whole meme that like, I've heard historians always say that Himmler was worse than Hitler. Some shit like that. I don't know. But I don't think I would really be the one saying vote for Hitler because he's less bad than Himmler. I'm like, if there was a runoff between those two in like the late 30s, I'd be like, I don't know, stupid. But that's what they hear. That's a problem, right? Okay. Whatever, dude. All right. But there is no genocide in Israel Palestine? I would say no. I don't think so. It's not impossible, but I'm probably going to say no. There could be one in the future, but I don't think there is right now. All right. Not with the evidence we have so far. Okay. And then someone shows me 10 clips of people suffering and crying and dying, and then they're like, "Oh, what about now?" And I'm like, okay, good, really, really fucking riveting. Okay. Trying to think how I want to start this. Oh God. Crystal Ball did a whole segment on the Destiny. Okay, I don't care. We'll maybe do that later. To be honest, the reactions to that debate have been quite interesting to me. No starvation. I would not say there's no starvation. That actually is a very real issue, I think, a real high risk. Okay, let's see. How many people have to die? It's not about numbers, it's about intent. Okay, stop. No, we're not doing the fucking job. That's the problem. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. Because it means you have to actually give a crash course. The fact that like that Muin Rabbani guy didn't know what Dollar Specialis was. Like, and Finkelstein just said that's mens rea. And I'm like, well, it's okay, come on. All right, whatever. Like a moth to the flame. True. All right, hang on. When's the election? November? You know, actually, I want to see how our guy pondering, because I think this might be the style of video I'm going to do, like the David Pacman-esque thing. How does this guy introduce
Recent reporting indicates that crucial swing voters are starting to hold Donald Trump and the Republican Party accountable for their cynical killing of a bipartisan border bill, suggesting that there may indeed be electoral consequences for the GOP before the November election. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it.
Wow.
All right, friends, this is awesome news, although I will say we are still many, many, many months away from the election. It's entirely possible that the winds will shift once again or are shifting in a positive direction, but not sufficient for Democrats to eke out a victory. But the situation is that the focus is immigration, and they enjoy...
Loner box, you smarmy cuck bastard.
Reftop, thanks for the $4.99. I really appreciate that. They're anti-democracy, don't want what Palestinians, Israelis, or Americans want, and want to impose their Western sensibilities in the Middle East. Wow. Way. Okay. And this is going to have to open. I need to organize where these pages open up. Like that. Did that do? Or that. Do I care about you guys, chat? I think I care a little bit. That seems fine. And then if I open a next one, will it open up here? Hey, that's good. Okay, good. I got a little good layout. Nice one. Why is it still so bright here, though? Oh, it's just the days are getting lighter. Nice. About not voting at all. Okay. What's that notepad it's called? It's called Obsidian. It's definitely the best note-taking thing I've used so far. I was a Google Docs guy for a long time before this, but yeah. Okay. Let's do it. We'll start it here. Olive, we'll start it here, okay? So, I wanted to do a rundown. No, let's start that again. That was retarded. Jesus Christ. Okay. Well. So, in the United States, there's going to be an election at the end of this year between Trump and Biden, well, most likely. At the moment, it seems like there's a bit of a coin flip between who's going to win. Biden is not doing very well in the polls, but also Trump has about 43 million criminal charges between now and then, some of which might actually reach a final verdict. So there's a good chance Trump, even if he wins, he might have to just get sentenced and spend the next 300 years in the electric chair, because that's what they do in America. I've seen a lot of left-leaning people on the internet, as you have too, saying that people are talking about not voting at all because, not just because they dismiss the lesser of two evils thing or anything like that. It's not even really to do with domestic opinion anymore. It's to do with their actions on Palestine, their behaviors towards Palestine. And often I hear people saying there's no difference, or at most Biden is like the lesser of two genocides. Okay, I don't buy either of those arguments, but rather than making that argument in particular, I'm just going to show you some of the differences. I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown between the differences between Trump and Biden when it comes to Israel and Palestine. So we'll look at their general opinions on Israel and Palestine, like as American presidents, their views towards the peace process, or just like general conduct. And then we're also going to talk about the ways that they have approached the war in particular since October 7th. So starting with Trump, Trump, as far as American presidents go, is an absolute horror show. Let's see what Trump did. Trump moved the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem after recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. This matters because if there's going to be any kind of peace process that's brokered by the United States, at least the most realistic one that is agreed upon by most countries that actually have power in the region and have a stake in the region, would say that it would be two states. And part of that two-state solution is East Jerusalem goes to Palestine. It becomes the capital for the West Bank. Now, Trump has very symbolically killed that with this. He also actually just tried to kill it in reality, because US presidents over time have offered various different peace processes, Clinton parameters, for example, being the big one. Trump had a peace plan as well that he proposed, which effectively would have turned Palestine into a Bantustan. Like, he appeased the Israeli right further than any president ever has, I think, in living memory, or at least in my lifetime. This would have been the Palestinian state under Trump. He would have allowed so many of these settlements just to stay in place. The land swaps were much more limited. This is a mess. Look at it. It's like a leopard print. And the fine details of what this actually involves is even worse. He basically gives up East Jerusalem. Now, there are speeches where he does say that Palestinians should have a capital in Jerusalem. He does say that in speeches. But do you know what he means by that? I didn't actually know what he meant by that contradictory statement, because, well, what he actually means is, he doesn't mean East Jerusalem as it's understood. This plan actually has a suggestion in it to give up one neighborhood on the outskirts of East Jerusalem called Abu Dis to the Palestinians, just a little neighborhood outside Jerusalem. And the suggestion from the plan is that Palestinians rename it to Al-Quds, because Al-Quds was the Arabic name for Jerusalem. That was the plan. The plan was to give them the Jerusalem we have at home. And it's worse than that. See, here at the Jordan Valley, for a very long time, the Israeli right especially have said that they can never give up the Jordan Valley because it's too important for security. It does have some security significance for Israel, but Clinton, at the time of the peace process in the 2000s, accepted that this significance was massively exaggerated. So the Jordan Valley, which Trump wants to give to Israel, in the Clinton parameters, it was going to go to Israel for only 6 years. It was going to be there for a 6-year interim period and then transferred to the Palestinians. Trump recognized the Golan Heights, the annexed part from Syria that Israel occupied in 1967. They were the first US government to do so in the world. Another part of this process was it involves a population transfer. It involved a fairly small, albeit, but an ethnic cleansing. It involved a population transfer of Palestinians who live in the Triangle area near the West Bank, including Kfar Qasim, like villages that were victims of massacres in the 50s. Yeah, it involved a population transfer. Also, in the Golan Heights, he they actually unveiled a settlement there called Trump Heights because they were so happy about Trump recognizing the annexation. Yeah, this was Trump's peace plan. It was basically selling out Palestinians. It wasn't a peace plan at all because Palestinians were never going to accept it, but this was what Trump pushes. Whenever you hear Trump in speeches saying that we had a tremendous peace plan, we would have ended the conflict by now, this is what he means. No East Jerusalem, no contiguous West Bank, little tunnel, apparently a tunnel linking Gaza and the West Bank, bits of desert in exchange, I guess, and a population transfer. Okay. Even if you're dissatisfied with Biden being very much a two-state solution, would probably along the lines of the Clinton parameters advocate, compare that to this. I mean, okay. And that's not all Trump did. Trump also cut aid. The United States does actually give quite a bit of aid to the Palestinians. Trump cut $230 million of it, including $150 million for UNRWA, as well as $75 million for economic and developmental assistance. Biden resumed this cut. He undid this. He resumed this funding in 2021. He restored it. So even that's a difference in itself. Biden's approach to the general conflict, well, most people would say that Biden, and I would agree with this, and other Democrats, even Obama especially, have generally only paid lip service to a two-state solution. They just kind of say it. They say the settlements are an obstacle, and that's it. It seems to be that this war has finally stirred up, at the very least, a conversation amongst the Democrats about moving beyond that. In January in this year, Blinken asked the State Department to start reviewing options to possibly recognize a Palestinian state. Recognizing a Palestinian state, by the way, is, for a Western country, is a big, big step. This was Corbyn. Corbyn ran on this platform. He was going to recognize a Palestinian state if he came into office. I think Bernie Sanders had something similar. But also the fact that Americans are doing this, it's just flirting right now, basically. But the fact that they're even reviewing this option is, compared to the last 10, 15, 20 years, is quite big. It's also inspired changes around the world as well, in different countries. David Cameron, of all people, has floated a similar idea in the UK. And there is also quite a sincere discussion from the Biden administration about using any pause in fighting, whether it's humanitarian ceasefire or permanent, using any pause in the fighting to coordinate and plan for reconstruction and future governance with the Saudis and the Qataris. Like, there is actually, thanks to the Democrat initiative, there is actually some incentive towards looking beyond what might happen to Palestinian sovereignty after the war. On top of that, there's actually, you can call that just lip service, so this is just starting, but there have also been actions in a positive direction. He has placed sanctions on Israeli settlers and outposts. So far, I think 3 citizens who are settlers have fallen under these sanctions, 2 of whom led the riots in Huwara, that village that was attacked, and quite a lot of it actually burnt down in last year. But it didn't stop there. They also actually sanctioned an outpost two outposts, the illegals, the outposts that are actually considered illegal by Israel as well. Yeah, the United States has placed sanctions on two of them. The United States has never done that before. They've never sanctioned an outpost. And that's actually quite significant right now because in the West Bank since October 7th, outposters have been working round the clock to illegally build roads, essentially dirt tracks, linking them to already existing settlements. And what that does is they're basically cementing their presence. And what can happen sometimes is if an outpost is there for long enough and it's built up and it's actually like buildings and houses with like power lines and water and electricity and everything, then and they're linked to an existing settlement and they've actually got employment relations, then what happens is Israel will just normalize the outpost and make it part of the settlement. And then all the land that's in between the outposts and the settlement become part of the settlement as well. So outposts, when it comes to settlement expansion, is a it's very intentional. It's done very calculated. It's very strategic. They try to get particular areas where they can get as much land of the most value as possible by doing it. They have been accelerating that massively since October 7th because there's just less and less energy there to stop them. Yeah, it's really, really bad. So the fact that there's actually action being taken against that now is, albeit small, good step in the right direction. The European Union is actually taking inspiration. That's another thing. The other significance about American presidents doing stuff like this is that other countries often follow. Hungary initially resisted the European Union taking action against settlements, but they've recently backed down. So it looks like Europe's going to go in the same direction. And even in his administration as well, the tone shift is it's quite different. Chuck Schumer, this speech I just saw just recently, he did a few things that were, they don't sound like much, but in the context of American politics, they're actually fairly big. He described Netanyahu as a major obstacle to peace. Normally, they would say settlements are an obstacle to peace, right? But actually calling the sitting prime minister, who they're having meetings with, a major obstacle, that's actually, again, a little bit of a newer step. And he actually also called for elections in Israel, which is a bit of a taboo for a democracy to tell another democracy to hold an election. But yeah, he's done it. And Biden, when asked, simply said it was a good speech. He didn't disown any of it. And this coming from Chuck Schumer as well, the Senate Majority Leader. Chuck Schumer is a Jewish senator from New York. He has a very centrist reputation. Actually, his opinion on Israel have been described as hawkish in the past. So I always say this about politicians. Politicians, it's good to remember, are not leaders. They're not. Some of them do have their own idealist positions and they pursue what they actually believe, even if it's a bit unpopular every now and then. But they're also followers. They're followers of public opinion. And it seems to be that they are responding in part to public opinion. They're never going to respond as much as the extreme radical left want them to, because if they do that, they'll lose moderates. And there are a lot more moderates in America than there are socialists and communists. So, is what it is. That's what you get for living in a democracy, eh? So that's their views on the peace process. Biden seems to have some commitment to, or some interest in moving towards a settlement that would actually be agreed upon by Palestinians, and in a way that actually might involve, or does involve, some tangible action against Israeli excesses and Israeli aggression towards, especially like the West Bank. Then, well, Trump wants to just sell it all out. Trump wants to hand over all the settlement blocks. Trump wants to give up East Jerusalem. He wants a unified Jerusalem. He wants to compensate Palestinians with a pound shop Jerusalem. There's a pretty big difference there, and especially if we're talking about after, like, post-war, when Israel has, if hypothetically Hamas is defeated and they lose governing and military power, then if we're in a position after that war when Israel has no excuse anymore, when they run out of excuses, are you going to want a Trump in office for that situation, or Biden? Like, I personally would rather a Biden. Okay, just saying. Let's say for war conduct. Okay. Trump hasn't actually spoken much about the war. He spoke in the October 7th period, like around a week after that. He went quiet all the way until this month. What did he say at the beginning? Well, first of all, let's look at what he believes in the past. Trump, to some degree or another, supports collective punishment. He likes collective punishment. He, in 2015, talking about ISIS, he gave this really interesting statement that was about saying that I'll just give you the quote. The other thing with the terrorists is you have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families. They care about their lives. Don't kid yourself. When they say they don't care about their lives, you have to take out their families. It's like, what the fuck? And okay, he did walk this back a little bit 4 months later, but when he came into office, he more or less didn't go completely away from this idea of collective punishment and extreme aggression. In Afghanistan, he relaxed the rules of engagement for airstrikes in 2017, and lo and behold, the number of civilian casualties skyrocketed. In 2019, I think 700 civilians were killed in airstrikes, which was more than any other year since the very beginning of the war. He loosened restrictions on the use of landmines in 2020, which had been placed in by Obama in 2014. He is a military hawk. He is a hyper-aggressive military hawk. When it comes to ceasefire, temporary or permanent, Trump has not said anything about a ceasefire. At the start of the war, he got in trouble for saying that Hezbollah were very smart. But most of his rhetoric about the war itself is mostly just all roads leading to this would never have happened if I were president. He says that a lot. On October 7th, he simply said 11th, sorry. He said he would fully support Israel defeating, dismantling, and permanently destroying the terrorist group Hamas. He also said that Hamas will burn forever in the eternal pit of hell, which, as far as rhetoric goes, generally not encouraged, because generally if you use rhetoric like this, as we see with Israeli leaders, is you are at the very least giving a kind of orange light, if not a green light, to kind of step a bit beyond. He then went completely silent until about March, when Israel was planning to invade Rafah. And his answer to that, simply, you've got to finish the problem. When every other country, including Biden, as we'll find out, when everyone else, including Biden, was very hesitant and saying, if you're going to go into Rafah, like, you can't do this without a plan for civilian evacuation. You can't do it. You have to have a concrete plan in place to ensure civilian protection at least as much as you can before going in, which Israel initially wasn't going to do. They were going to go in on the 10th. They have held back now, and you've noticed, actually, because of the pressure from not just Biden, but also European countries, is now Netanyahu's rhetoric is very much, we're going to protect the civilians. We have a plan in place. We have people who are discussing getting people evacuated. We're discussing making sure that we don't have a massive number of people dying in the crossfire. The rhetoric has changed a lot compared to all the Amalek shit from the start of the war. He was asked questions about the ceasefire in this address. He just didn't answer them. He's not interested. He doesn't have any interest in a ceasefire. To Netanyahu, his message was simply, I think you have to finish it up and do it quickly and get back to the world of peace. Yeah, Trump is very much, he's a hawk. He wants to, his entire approach is kill the bad guys as quickly as possible. Civilian collateral, deal with it. But mostly, in basically all these addresses, mostly Trump's big message is that if I were president, this wouldn't have happened. That's his big message. It's about himself. Biden. Let's have a look at some of the things Biden did since October 7th. First of all, one of his first things that he did was that he pressured Israel to resume the water supply to southern Gaza. If you remember, around October 9th, Israel shut their water supply off to Gaza. About 9% of the total water supply of Gaza. It's like 3 pipes. It's about 9% of Gaza's water. After a few very long and intense meetings with Biden, they reopened the first pipe on October 15th, and then the second one at the end of the month to the south of Gaza. The fact that Israel did this at all is insane. Like, this is criminal. Like, you should not do this. But thankfully, at the same time that Trump is talking about burning them in hell or whatever, Biden was working to get that water supply back on immediately, as soon as possible. And his rhetoric at the time was very much, the Palestinian people are suffering greatly as well. We mourn the loss of innocent Palestinian lives like the entire world. The people of Gaza need food, water, medicine, and shelter. So that was very early on in the war. He also, at the beginning of the war, he dissuaded Israel from going to war with Hezbollah after October 7th because some people, I think especially was it Yoav Gallant, wanted to do that. They actually wanted to declare full war against Hezbollah at the same time as Hamas, which would have meant... No, I don't think providing them water is criminal. I think stopping the water is criminal. Did I misword that? Okay, whatever. If Israel went to war with Hezbollah after October 7th, that would have been... It would have been a disaster for Israel, for one, because they don't... Like, Hezbollah is much of a taller order to get rid of than Hamas. Hezbollah are a lot stronger than Hamas. And they're also in a country, not just an enclave. It also would have been a disaster for Lebanese people. I think in the last Lebanese-Israeli war, which lasted just about a month, barely over a month, 1 million Lebanese people were displaced. Like quite a few thousand people died as well, in not that much time. The fact that they were trying to do this, or that they were considering doing this after October 7th is absolutely batshit. And it turns out there was actually a bit more to it than just them talking about it. Apparently, according to US officials, the Israelis actually had... Because of bad intelligence, they believed that a Hezbollah attack was imminent, that there was actually consideration to preemptively hit because they thought that Hezbollah was going to launch a full-scale assault because they believed that Hezbollah was behind the Hamas attack, that they were actually coordinating. Thankfully, it turns out that they were wrong, but if they'd believed that at the time and actually acted on it, that would have been an absolute disaster. And that's what the aircraft carriers were about as well. The ones that Biden placed in the Mediterranean was to deter Hezbollah from doing that if they were considering it. And yeah, this was a lot of the conversations between Biden and Netanyahu at the time were very much insisting that Israel doesn't do this. Thankfully, they didn't. So, yeah. Biden, unlike Trump, has repeatedly pushed for a ceasefire. A temporary one, admittedly. A 6-week proposal was the most recent one. There have been about 4 or 5 proposals right now. One of them actually went through. The other ones have either been shot down by Israel, Hamas, or both. This 6-week proposal, which was to allow flow of aid and to release the most vulnerable hostages, apparently this one was mostly accepted by Israel. They wanted, their sticking point, however, was apparently that Hamas didn't agree to a defined category of vulnerable hostages. And this was the one that failed to go in before Ramadan. And again, if you're saying again that this isn't enough, that humanitarian ceasefires are not enough, it should be a full ceasefire. The reason that an American president can't really do that is because Netanyahu and Hamas have they can't agree on it. They can't agree on anything. Israel only would do a permanent ceasefire if Hamas surrendered and gave up power. Hamas will only accept a permanent ceasefire if Israel leaves Gaza completely and just unilaterally withdraws. And given the fact that they're saying they want Israel to leave Gaza permanently for a ceasefire, whilst their leaders are going on TV saying that they want October 7th to happen 1 million times, then yeah, neither side is going to give up on that. Anyway, and a president can't force that from either end. As for the aid situation, he implemented the humanitarian sea corridor from Cyprus to Gaza. I think this is the first ships are actually ready to go with this. This is quite recent. He constantly reiterates Israel's need to allow humanitarian aid workers to move through Gaza. This is what him saying it now, addressing the bottleneck issue.
Some leading international efforts to get more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. And Israel must do its part. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire.
Okay. And by the way, Trump never talks about aid. He doesn't talk about aid. He doesn't talk about ceasefires. He says, get the job done. And he says, if I were president, this would never have happened. That's what Trump says, okay? And also, more recently, he pushed. People will say that he drew a red line. I don't think there was a red line. That was a comment that the White House didn't really endorse. I think it might have been a misspeak or a hot mic or something. I don't know. But the red line thing wasn't true. But what he did do was that he quite vocally pushed against the idea of Israel going into Rafah without a plan for civilians, which it seemed like they were going to do because their initial deadline was March 10th. But then by March 12th, they're talking about how they're developing a plan to evacuate civilians, which kind of suggests that they were going to do it without one before. But yeah, thankfully, again, pressure not just from Biden, but I think many, many governments in Europe were saying the same thing. The fact that they were going to do this is absolutely batshit. Also, the Israelis also, they did approve the aid corridor from Cyprus to Gaza. They did approve that, obviously, because it makes their jobs easier, like someone else doing the aid thing for them. But Biden nonetheless said... Or, yeah, the American officials nonetheless said, we're not waiting for the Israelis. Like, yeah. As in they were going to do it with or without Israel approving it or helping them or anything. Yeah. And it seems like now, because of those warnings, that they're still going to go into Rafah. They don't think they're going to finish the war without going into Rafah, but their deadline seems to have been pushed now. I think it's Friday was the last I heard. They're going to do it on the 22nd. But I'm hoping if they're doing it with an evacuation plan, I don't even know how that's going to work. Are they either going to evacuate to camps in the Sinai? People are talking about camps being built in the Sinai, or if they're going to be evacuated to the middle of Gaza, like a round trip. I don't have no idea. But the fact that there is some kind of plan supposedly going in place now, compared to the fact that they were going to go in without one, that doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, whatever. I also got some MISC stuff here, I guess. But yeah, the pressure that Biden is putting on Netanyahu compared to Trump is just like he's actually doing things to try and, as much as he can, to keep Netanyahu within, I guess, like the rules of war, within like what is, or at least to minimize humanitarian, like the impending humanitarian crisis as much as can be done. The problem is that Trump doesn't say anything about this. And because Biden's concern about the humanitarian crisis is so pressing, like they've been falling out quite a few times as well. I think Biden has reportedly called Netanyahu an asshole at least 3 times in these talks. He was caught on a hot mic saying that he and Netanyahu need to have a come to Jesus meeting. Like Netanyahu's Jewish, but okay. But yeah, that's more or less Biden's position compared to Trump's. Biden does not disagree that Israel has a right to go to war with Hamas. He believes that Hamas gave Israel casus belli, cause for war, in October 7th. And his opinion, despite that, seems to be the case that has been very much pushing that Palestinian civilians are not Hamas. And if you're going to go to war with Hamas, you can't just go to war with them without concern for civilian lives. And it seems to be that Biden's concern for civilian lives is far greater than Netanyahu's, and that's why they've been the crux of their falling out. Whereas Trump has basically just said, green light, do what you want. But yeah, and I know how much this has to do with the protests or the pressure. I would argue it actually does have a bit to do with it. Because, again, presidents care about public opinion. I know people are saying that this might have something to do with the uncommitted vote in Michigan. I don't know if I buy that necessarily. The uncommitted vote in Michigan just recently was 13%. But when Obama ran unopposed, Biden was opposed in this one. When Obama ran unopposed, the uncommitted vote was 11%. So you could also argue that the 13%, the 2024 one was a much bigger turnout. So I don't know, you can take it or leave it. But I do think if you are one of those people who is considering that you don't want to vote for either Trump or Biden because you don't think it'll make any difference, or because you think you're choosing the lesser of 2 genocides or whatever, like at the end of the day, one of these presidents actually cares about humanitarian concerns and cares about implementing measures that could potentially save like thousands of lives, because that's what these humanitarian corridors and temporary 6-week ceasefires and all that, that's what they do. They save people from starving to death, right? Or dying of disease or anything like that, which is a very, very, very high risk of that being the case for thousands of people in the north of Gaza right now. The situation in the north of Gaza is like, it's dire, it's desperate. And the fact that you have one president who actually cares about that and is trying to do things to alleviate it, whereas you have another one who just wants to win the war as quickly as possible, okay. And the fact that after the war, one of these people actually has some moderately feasible approach to Palestinian sovereignty after the matter, whereas the other one basically just wants to appease the Israeli right more than any other president has ever done. So, yeah, I don't know. Those are, I'd say, the significant differences between Trump and Biden on Israel-Palestine. You can take it or leave it. If you're convinced, hey, good for you. If you're not, oh well, maybe next time. Okay, cool. Okay.
Remember the Holodomor?
Paige, thanks for the sub. I really appreciate that. Okay, that was my little political segment. Okay. Whew. The thing about Lebanon in the beginning of the wars and really how you described it, that's what the article was saying. It said that Israel was convinced. I don't know if Israel would have actually gone in, but it seems like they were convinced that Hezbollah was planning an attack and that they were working with Hamas to do October 7th. Anyway. Israeli reporter said it wasn't Biden. Oh, okay. No, I don't know if it was Biden, but even then, if there's a risk of something happening and the president is trying to contribute to stopping it, even if it's a decision they would have come to by themselves, I think that still says something about Biden, no? They decide, yeah, that's what I'm saying though. But what I'm saying is that Trump, I don't think Trump would be on the phone to Netanyahu 3 times a day making the case that it shouldn't happen. Because again, that's just like, what's the argument there then? The argument I'm making is that Biden has a different approach from Trump, that Biden encourages restraint, that Biden encourages not taking rash actions like ironically, like America post 9/11. Okay? I don't know. I think that's a... But I'm hoping to do more segments like that in the future. More of these kind of just like smaller argument segments. Come to Jesus is normal in the South. I know it is. I just there's something funny about saying it to a Jew, right? That's just, I don't know. Which one would you rather share a hostel with? Thanks, Matt, again. I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. It's not like voting is part of the problem, but Loner is too incompetent to recognize that. Oh, Cosmic Fox, you're more than welcome to come into Discord and tell me why I'm too incompetent to recognize that voting isn't the problem. It's a problem. It's an important thing to do. Okay.
Loner box, you smarmy cuck bastard.
Anyway. Probably share a hostel with Trump because there'd be drugs. Hey. Are there still Finkelstein memes going on around? Oh no. Was it crystal ball? People are saying Crystal Ball spoke about the Finkelstein debate. What did she say? Melanie's in the VC. Hello.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm a little bit upset with your coverage.
Okay.
It's not the end of the world for me, right? You do you. I just think it's kind of one-dimensional.
Okay.
So, like, for example, voting, like a lot of people nowadays feel disenfranchised from voting. And I think you're trying to remedy that, and it's misguided by getting people to think of this as a single vote. What's it called? Single issue vote. Like, God damn it, I can't think of the words to use here. But like, you're thinking of people as single issue voters, and so you're trying to be like, vote for Biden because Palestine, except Democrat. Like, you're also telling people to vote for Democrats.
I don't think it's a single issue case with Palestine. I'm just saying that there are some people who seem to be not interested in voting Biden because of Palestine. I'm just going to look at here the difference between the two of them on this one issue. It's not like I would ever say that Palestine's the only reason. Domestic issues are a big part of it as well. I've spoken about abortion. I've spoken about education. I've spoken about immigration. I've spoken about quite a few things other than just even trans rights, actually. I've spoken about that more so than just Palestine.
So this is particularly a way to remedy people who don't want to vote for Biden. Just so I'm clear.
This is already a way. What do you mean?
No, but like, this is your approach. This is why you're doing this, is to remedy that fact.
Yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate the difference between a Democrat and Republican administration right now. Yeah, especially under Trump. Yeah.
Do you think maybe you're like limiting people by only giving them two options?
I'm not giving them two options. There are only two options.
Well, there's independence.
They're not options.
Well, according to you.
According to the fact that they're not options, they're going to get like, what, 5% of the vote? Which independent would I mean, if there's an independent I could vouch for who I think would be far better than the other two and who has a chance of showing that and achieving that.
Okay, sure. In this election, I'll concede that there are no viable independents as far as we know.
Okay.
In general, though, like, if I recall you saying politicians aren't necessarily leaders. They tend to care more about what their voters think, right?
In part, they're also idealists. They might sometimes
And
do
there's-
things that they believe in. Yeah.
And let's be clear, that's not as true for a president in their second term, because you can only have two terms.
Hmm.
And this would be Biden's second term.
So what do we think he's going to do? He's just going to make all these promises and then just ditch them all?
Oh, I think he's just way more likely to. Why would we expect him to be better faith the second time around?
Because presidents also care about their legacy. They also care about their party to some degree. They care about midterms.
Sure. I don't know how much we can factor in legacy into the equation here, because nobody really knows how much, Biden's handling of the Israel v. Palestine conflict is really going to, reflect on him down the road. It's probably domestic policies that do that more than anything.
It depends, because if he feels like, yeah, I probably agree. Probably the domestic thing will matter. But again, Clinton in his second term on the way out was till the very end trying to pursue peace with Israel Palestine. He didn't need to do that. Well,
maybe he was an ideologue in a sense.
Maybe. And I don't see why Biden wouldn't be. Yeah.
So my big thing is, do you, like you said, well, this is kind of the consequence of living in a democracy, right? Is that fair to kind of use that to reason against you for a second?
Yeah.
Do you think like voters, if they did end up voting for third party, would end up putting pressure on these politicians who care more about what they think than their internal ideology?
If that third party could actually offer something quite substantial that was quite popular, like if there's a third party that's getting like 10, 15% of the vote, maybe. The problem is that when people who are more fringe, especially like social and communists, feel like they're pressuring politicians to move in their direction, they seem to acknowledge that the more a politician moves in their direction, the further away they move from moderates. And there are a lot more moderates than there are fringe people. So I think you'd have to have a pretty big third party to do that.
It seems kind of like you're putting the fringe left into a box that can only either vote to change things or not change anything at all.
They put themselves in that box. They say don't vote, and then they
Oh.
don't do anything outside of not voting. Apart from like some, I have plenty of respect for all the like anarchist people or other people who do their mutual aid organizations or who do their protests and everything like that. But for the most part, the people I'm engaging with in my sphere online, they put themselves in that box. They say don't vote, but they also, what else they do? Join the American Communist Party, go to Cuba for a week, like yeah.
Well, I think the point there would be to provide alternatives. And granted, providing alternatives to the Democratic Party is a little bit different. But with something like Food Not Bombs, right? Like the idea is to be on the ground and engaging with your community by providing what they need directly to them, kind of like a form of direct action, as opposed to waiting for politicians to solve hunger in their communities.
It's not it's not necessarily mutually exclusive, though. I mean, one of my last relationships with a Food Not Bombs organizer. That person voted. They voted, but they also did the things that they felt that governments were a little bit behind on. Yeah.
I don't know if I agree, actually. Like, that person's personal choices are their own. I'm not going to criticize them for that because I don't know them. But personally, I think if you're voting in a candidate who will get in the way of Food Not Bombs, then you've just shot yourself in the foot.
Well, that's the point, though, is that in the UK we had choices between SNP ministers or Conservative ministers in Scotland. Conservative ministers were backing anti-protest bills that would have made the lives of Food Not Bombs activists much more difficult. Food Not Bombs activists under a Conservative government pushing through those anti-protest bills is much more likely to get harassed by the police. It's more likely that a cabinet minister might actually come in and say, I consider this protest to be a violation of public order unilaterally, and you just have to clear them away. So,
Okay, fair. And UK is a bit different. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's so different that it can't matter. I think my contention is more trying to affect change through who we vote. When at the end of the day, like if voting Democrat or Republican mattered, we would have seen more progress in Israel v. Palestine right now because we've had both.
Not necessarily. You can have one who's doing damage and one who's just doing basically nothing. Trump did a lot of damage. Like things did change under Trump for Palestine. They changed for the worse.
And can voting for moderates that are on the same side of the aisle as you be damaging?
In what way? Maybe if there's an example you can give me.
Well, if you have a movement and say like perhaps it intimidates moderates a bit because it makes people question what they're really doing up there, and then they realize, like, say you're Bernie Sanders, that you're about to get voted in, so they sabotage you.
I feel like I need specific examples.
Oh, Bernie Sanders.
Was Bernie Sanders sabotaged?
By his own party? Yeah. Is that still up for debate?
I don't think it was up for debate. I think he didn't get as many votes as Biden. I don't think he had as much support as Biden did. I think there was Bernie who was the progressive, and every other candidate was a moderate. The combined moderate vote was always higher than Bernie's. And when the other moderates dropped out, it was inevitable that those votes were going to go to the moderate candidate, Biden. Yeah. I think Biden did pretty well in New Hampshire, and then he kind of overestimated his performance in like Super Tuesday. But yeah.
Okay, I'm Canadian, you're overseas. Let's not make a value judgment of who's more qualified and just say we're both technically unqualified here to make this call. But
What
like,
was your claim? And you were laughing at the idea of it even being debated.
right.
Who's the
Sorry.
incompetent one now? Sorry, I'm joking. That was cheeky.
Yeah, no, it was good. I liked it actually. But I think I don't think it's as easy to say like Bernie simply got more votes, because there were plenty of times along the way where Democrats could have played ball, could have had them at like their various fundraisers or facilitated him at the DNC, and they simply didn't.
What do you mean by
It-
that?
Well, you'd agree that like during campaigning, you need the DNC to kind of like help you along, right? Instead of like finding other candidates to win instead of you.
I don't know how that undoes the. I don't know what that means, but
That
yeah, I don't know
every
what you're referring
candidate
to.
who gets anywhere in politics under the Democrat banner gets the help of the DNC, because that's kind of what the DNC is there for.
Oh, but because Bernie was like a more of a moderate and more of an outsider, he didn't have like the DNC's thumb on the scales for him, is what you're saying, or like they didn't support him in the same way
If
that they.
anything, they put the thumb on somebody else's scale to make sure he couldn't get in, and that was one of the things that was apparent. Him not. Now I can't remember if it was which DNC it was, but one of the DNCs around 2016 he wasn't allowed to speak at. It was a huge outrage. They did all sorts of things to try to ruin his momentum, because it wasn't about letting their best candidate win. It was about letting their most corporate candidate win, aka Biden.
I don't know what you're referring to. Are you talking about corporate? Because again, like part of wasn't also the problem with Bernie that he just wasn't able to secure support within the DNC? Because again, that would make sense. He was an outsider. He had been an
He had some of
independent.
the biggest rallies of that like any Democratic candidate has
Big
seen in a
rallies,
decade.
again, big rallies. Being a rock
That's
star,
support.
Trump has
That's
very
support.
big. It's a kind of support.
And
It's
Trump won.
against Biden. Trump always
Yeah.
had bigger rallies than
Well,
Biden.
Hillary, sorry.
No, but yeah,
won against
Trump
Hillary.
always had bigger rallies than Biden, but Biden won. Rallies is just a type of supporter. Yeah, like you're more of a rock star, sure. But
I don't think
at the end
Trump
of
would
the
have won
day,
if that was his first year, though.
hmm?
Or I don't think he would have lost if that was his first year against Biden.
Oh, okay, but that's like just a speculation. That doesn't really add to the conversation.
I mean, we're doing forecasting, right? We're trying to look at the variables and see what's happened in the past and try to apply it to the future.
So-
This is exactly what you've been doing with how to solve the Israel-Palestine thing. Oh, well, Democrats care about the opinions of their voters. Mostly not true. So therefore, if we put more pressure on them with our voting, again, mostly not true, then they'll do better with Israel v. Palestine.
Well, I don't think voting or not voting doesn't actually put pressure on Democrats. I don't think. I don't think I've seen
so
any
like
indication
running
of that.
third-party candidates or new Democrats against the establishment Democrats is actually what puts pressure on them. So we should be finding new candidates who actually are more like Bernie, and then trying to make them as viable as possible.
You can try and find that person, and if they can meaningfully challenge Biden in a primary, then sure. But yeah, those people don't exist. So,
Well, one of the first steps is
like, I would have
not
supported
saying-
Bernie in a primary, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, me too. One of the first steps is not throwing our hands up into the air and saying, "Well, I guess the corporate Democrats have it all like bought up, and we just need to vote for them now." Like, no.
No,
we
I don't
need to
think the
start
corporate
thinking
Democrats
outside of
have
the
it. All,
box.
I don't think the corporate Democrats have it all bought up. I think those Democrats are the ones who are the most popular. Like their policies seem to match the most with the public that they're aiming for, like the American public.
So why aren't we strategizing to make sure their next candidate is an absolute flop?
Why aren't we?
Yeah.
You want the corporate Democrats candidate to be a flop?
Yeah, because I want whatever the left pushes, the fringe left, as an alternative to have a better chance.
Even if it means a Republican getting in? Because that's the risk.
Okay, well, let's be clear what we mean by getting in, right? Because if this is just the presidential debate or election, then yes, it's zero sum. But if we're talking about incrementalism, then we're talking about starting local and working our way up.
Yeah, so what if there's like someone like the Squad, like if someone like tries to primary, like say if like a more right-leaning Democrat gets challenged by a more progressive Democrat in a primary, yeah, you should probably vote for the one you prefer, which would be the progressive Democrat.
Right, but I'm saying like if you want to solve IVP, especially in the future, not just immediately, then you need to start finding candidates that people can actually vote for as alternatives instead of hand waving. Because I think saying like, oh, well, this candidate's better, so clearly just go vote for them, otherwise you don't care about this issue, is incredibly dismissive, and that's exactly what disenfranchises
Well, wait,
voters.
we're talking about the presidential election. That's what I was talking about. If we were talking about a particular primary where I think there's a candidate who's better in Israel-Palestine than the incumbent Democrat, then I would say support them. I'm not against doing that.
Okay, so let's say like I actually consider like the drilling of oil in America to be one of the worst problems, worse than IVP because I don't live there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as an American, and this is just hypothetically, I kind of care about them drilling in my backyard more, and Biden doesn't do anything to stop that. So my question would be, why do we expect that person to care so much about IVP that they suddenly vote, right? Because this is what I mean about single issue voters and why I think your logic is flawed.
My logic that you made up, by the way, I was addressing that video to people who believe that Trump and Biden are the same on Israel-Palestine. I'm not addressing single issue voters necessarily. Some of them might be. I'm not telling people who don't care about
I shouldn't
IP.
keep using that.
Yeah, I'm not telling people who don't care about IP to make it their single issue. Obviously not. That would be insane. No, so I'm not doing that. As for what was your other argument about? I'm pretty sure agricultural investment, which was a lot of, or green investment, a lot of which was frozen by Trump, was resumed by Biden as well, and also increased. I think, is this not actually? There's one kind of
No, but
green
he's
energy
also
that.
accelerating drilling in a lot of places.
Hang on,
and fracking.
where is the? Well, I have.
All I'm
notes
saying
on
is that
this.
there are going to be people who, because Biden did something really awful to them specifically last term, can't imagine voting him next term. And if we lose the election, part of that is because we didn't primary a better alternative.
This
now,
is the first
I don't
time.
recall if you can primary a recumbent president.
What, like you can't primary a president who's in for their second term?
Can you? I don't remember.
I have no idea.
It's
I'm pretty sure
50-50 for me.
so because of a lot of projects that Trump just kind of abandoned and then came back under Biden, I think this is the first time ever in American history when electricity from renewables has surpassed coal for the first time since 2022.
That's interesting. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, but this is the thing is like, I feel like you're the incompetent one. You don't know the details of any of these issues. You're just kind of like going off of things that I have to double check all the time. Yeah.
I'm not trying to make political forecasts and prescriptions as much. In fact, if anything, I'm trying to say be more careful, because when you start thinking of voters as being like, oh, well, if I say who's better at Israel v. Palestine, that helps Democrats. My problem is like, we on the fringe left are not providing enough alternatives, and therefore any prescriptions we make are like, and this, like, maybe I was projecting this onto you, so I apologize if I was, are kind of incompetent because we're not providing those alternatives.
How would you want the left to bring those alternatives? Run candidates, or to have protest groups that just happen alongside the electoral process? Or I mean, there's loads of things people can do.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's not mutually exclusive. And I think like it's one of those like all we can do is everything kind of deal. And we need to be coordinated, and we need to not step over each other, of course. But it feels like we're almost not doing anything at this point. I know that's not true. It's just that the people who are doing stuff aren't getting attention for it. But I think the fact that they can ignore us, the fact that the majority of us are just trying to maintain our own internal stability, means that, what those people are doing is almost like I don't want to say it's a lost cause, but I mean, we're kind of throwing them under the bus by ignoring them and just saying like, oh, well, it's either vote or don't vote.
I would never say it's vote or don't vote. Thankfully I never have. I think
I've had to reconcile my own anti-electoral views over the past year or so, by the way. So this is kind of a new take for me.
Okay. I can't remember what state it was. There was a state where there was a majority Republican Senate, that actually voted down an anti-trans bill. And the only reason they did it was because the trans rights organization had spent the entire lead up to the vote talking to different legislators, because again, these legislators work in public buildings. Anyone can go in and just say hi. And enough of them had done that they just kind of managed to, I suppose, humanize themselves or communicate their issues to those legislators. Was it Ohio? Was it? I can't remember. But yeah, like, but obviously that's things that people, obviously that would have been easier to do with Democrats in, but even with Republicans in, I think like people who want to push alternatives for particular issues, is they can do that at the local level. And I feel like that's something I try to say as well. It's not just voting for your president. It's also like in any country, local power is very much up for grabs because people just don't use it.
Okay. Sorry for coming at you like that. I think I maybe did read it a bit too much into what you were saying as a prescription. So I apologize for coming at you so hard.
Cool. Okay. That's all right.
It makes a lot more sense to me now. So
okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
do you ever want to debate on guns?
I'm too Scottish to have an opinion on guns. Like,
Oh, okay. I'm looking for someone to debate me on guns, but
what's your position on guns?
just totally anti it. Like, might consider an alternative society where like guns are community owned and there's incredibly heavy regulation, but that's about it.
Oh, interesting. If you're around in the Discord, you'll probably find someone who wants to fight you on that, maybe.
I am, yeah. So if anyone wants to fight me on it, just message me from Loner's Discord.
Okay. I appreciate you coming on, okay?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Smith.
What's up?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Yeah. Anyway, that was a great discussion. Kind of got started out pretty hot, but got cool at the end. Anyway, thanks for having me on. I just wanted to come on real quick. There was a book I had in my collection I wanted to pimp endlessly, by Sadiq Al-Azim. He was, I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, but he was an old intellectual from Syria back during the UAR era. It was self-criticism after the defeat, 1967.
Okay.
And it's just been a great reading from the Six-Day War and the aftermath with a lot of great sourcing. And it's just, I think I really liked reading it just because a lot of the discussion versus Israel-Palestine has been about, like, what's the way forward? We're kind of getting a little bit doomer-pilled after kind of everything that's going on. And I think kind of the one big hope is kind of having a really good, strong secular Arab left. And a lot of the points that were covered in that book by Sadiq were really good. Like I said, I just started reading it back up again. So I wanted to pass that on to you and anyone else in the Discord. It's really great.
Okay. You could send me a DM of it if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, just to clarify about the voting, about that Bernie Sanders incident. Yeah, they were talking about that Nevada caucus incident. There was a bit of a mix-up that kind of turned into a riot. I think they were talking about that one. That was an interesting event. But no, I'm very much pro-voting on that one.
Hey.
And, yeah, I live in Minnesota, so for me, our electoral politics are a little bit different. Our party isn't so much the Democratic Party; it's a Farmer Laborers Party, which is sort of affiliated with the Democratic. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Affiliated with the Democratic Party, and so there's a sort of kind of, I'd say, like a social democratic bent to it ever so slightly. We just passed paid leave that should be coming into effect here in about 2026. That's a pretty big deal. But yeah, at every level, it's very important, especially when it comes to things even at the local level. For example, just even when it comes to like basic property taxes, a lot of stuff for your housing prices is controlled by your county assessor, and so you have to know who that is if you want to have a say on, like, hey, what your property is worth and what your taxes are spent on, because later on down the line, that's going to affect, what you're assessed and, what you're paying and, where your taxes go to, a lot of renewal projects. Like, for example, they're doing a lot of stuff over in the Rondo neighborhood over here in St. Paul. Or, I'm sorry, I'm ranting a little bit.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So, but yeah, at every level, it's really important. Top level. And so, from what I understand, based on European politics, is it's a parliamentary system. So you'll have a coalition of smaller parties that kind of come together, and you'll have like Tory and Labour parties that come together, and that's kind of like the two kind of major parties, and you'll have like your fringe Greens and like your fringe communists or whatever sides. U.S. politics are kind of the same way in the sense that you have like your CMOs. So like, for example, when you're talking about the big issue in the U.S., you have the Ukraine aid that's being held up, and that's being held up by what's known as the Freedom Caucus, which is a congressional membership organization.
Mhm.
Don't let the term caucus fool you. There's caucusing, which is like where you actually go out. Those are like your party organized voting, where they go out there and they select their candidate. And there's your CMO caucus, which is the congressional member organization. And these are like groups of congressional members who are organized around a central issue, much like smaller parties would be for your MPs and stuff like that in Europe, from what I understand. And so essentially these CMOs, like the Freedom Caucus, or even like ones organized around
Mhm.
ethnic issues, those are important. So essentially, those are kind of one of the major driving issues that it can be hard for us to get those far left candidates into office. Is that starting at those local smaller midterm elections are really important, voting at every level, even when it's not the most important elections, midterms, and even like the presidential elections and at the local elections, building those consensuses over long periods to get to where we need to be.
So the answer actually is to vote harder. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, vote harder. Yeah,
Wow.
essentially. So it's almost like in a democratic society, you have to build consensus at every level. So I noticed some people in the chat were getting a little tired by the running, and I apologize for monopolizing the stream. I didn't mean to do that. Apologies, but that was kind of the wind up. You have to build consensus in a democratic society. You need to be engaged at all times.
Cool.
So
I think I agree. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming on. Okay.
yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. I don't accept your apology. Wow. Where the fuck is the oh, I think I found it. This is a thing again, is it? I saw a few people posting this. Russia had the right to invade Ukraine. Okay, do I want to? Okay, let's see what they actually said.
I'll begin.
24 minutes. I don't care. Don't care. Waste of time. Let's make it 12 minutes, please.
I'll begin my remarks on the Ukraine by noting that just
that
before
Ukraine?
this program began, I was watching a presentation by Jeffrey Sachs. He was speaking to a Chilean audience. And Jeffrey Sachs, as many of you know, is a very respected economist, and he's been very active on the international scene since his late 20s. He was actually, I think, for worse, not for better, he was a major advisor to Boris Yeltsin beginning in 1992. And in my opinion, but that's not for now, he is significantly culpable for the catastrophe that ensued in Russia under Yeltsin's leadership, a catastrophe of a magnitude such that you could say Yeltsin, with the advice of Jeffrey Sachs, or I should say Jeffrey Sachs, through Yeltsin, was singularly responsible for bringing Vladimir Putin into power. But that's another time and another place. I mentioned Jeffrey Sachs because the question of Ukraine obviously came up during his presentation, and I was surprised, but also I can use the word, I was gratified to hear that he said, and now I think I'm quoting him verbatim, but you all can check. All you have to do is go to YouTube and enter Jeffrey Sachs Chile. He said, I think I'm quoting him verbatim, he said, the US caused the war in Ukraine. He didn't limit himself to saying the US provoked the war.
he said the U.S.
So he's like, he spends 2.5 minutes hyping up the credentials of the person he's talking about, and then just gives their opinion. Is he? But I feel like he always does this in exchange of making an argument. It's so weird. Is he gonna make it? Let's see.
caused the war in Ukraine. And for those of you who follow these debates, these discussions, it's in my opinion, it's a critical distinction, because many people, obviously not a majority, but a significant number of people, have been willing to say that the U.S. and NATO, the U.S. provoked the war. However, they stopped short of saying the U.S. caused the war, but instead say, notwithstanding the provocations by the U.S. and NATO, notwithstanding the provocations, they say that the Russian invasion of Ukraine was criminal. And I'm not aware of anyone, except for myself, and I think Sachs comes pretty close when he says caused the war. My position has been from day one of the war that Russia had the right to attack, but, and it's not a big but it's a but. There's a difference between having a right and exercising that right. And I have said from the beginning, Russia had the right to attack. However, I cannot say with any kind of certainty that it was a wise or a prudent thing to attack. To me, those are separate questions. But on the, let's call it on the moral question, it's my view they had the right to attack.
That's a pretty...
Now, what I would like to do in this few minutes that we're going to talk about the Ukraine and then hearing from you is to make an analogy and then see how you react to it. My area of professional expertise is the Israel-Palestine conflict. And so I'm going to make a comparison with that conflict.
Six-Day War, right?
So a lot of you will not remember.
Because that's what Ukraine was doing.
But the critical turning point in the Israel-Palestine conflict came in 1967, the 1967 war, sometimes called the Six-Day War. We'll just call it the June 1967 war. Now, there's no question, as a factual matter, that Israel fired the first shot. Israel denied it for about a week that it fired the first shot. But after about a week or 2 weeks, I can't remember now with precision, Israel frankly admitted, because the evidence was overwhelming, that they fired the first shot. However, they claimed that they had a right to launch the attack on the neighboring Arab countries, they being Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. And their argument went something like this. Ali Aden, who was the foreign minister of Israel at the time, in his memoir, he had a famous chapter called To Live or to Die. To Live or to Die. And in this chapter, he builds up a scenario such that Israel had no choice. So he says, number one, that Egypt had sealed the Straits of Tiran. That's a waterway that led to a port in Israel's south. And he said, in his famous metaphor, he said, after the sealing of the Straits of Tiran, Israel was now breathing with one lung. Then he said, Egypt had moved approximately 100,000 troops into the Sinai, the Egyptian Sinai, and they were poised to attack. And then he said, at the end of May, Egypt signed a joint agreement with Jordan, an alliance aimed at Israel.
Yeah, what was the what's the fucking comparison here between this and what Ukraine was doing to Russia before? Because again, the war was 2014. Russia was already aggressing on Ukraine before 2014. So the first shot was fired in 2014 by Russia. What did Ukraine do compared to this? Were they amassing troops on the eastern border? Were they closing Russian waterways? Were they before 2014? Okay.
So he takes this accumulation.
Ukrainian army was fucking tiny in 2014.
Facts. Israel is breathing with one lung. Egypt is poised to attack. It has 100,000 troops in the Sinai. At the end of May, an agreement is struck between Egypt and Jordan. A defense pact is struck between them. And he says, when you take this accumulation,
I will say, sorry, there's such an incredible overlap coming right now. And for some reason, the nucleus of it is Israel-Palestine, where you seem to have like tankies, Nazis, Russia supporters with left-wing aesthetics, radical left Soviet sympathizers, all Islamic fundamentalists, and they've all become kind of indistinguishable on social media, on Twitter. And the way they talk has become very indistinguishable as well. it's not even a horseshoe theory anymore. It's like a fucking. It's like when you're trying to look at a horseshoe when you're on acid, or with your eyes a bit squinted, and there's like you're seeing double. What the fuck?
Of facts that Israel had no option but to attack, and it fired the first shot. Now, as it turned out, it's easy to demonstrate that all of the claims Israel made were flat out false. But that's not going to concern me now. I've extensively documented it in various publications, as have many, many other historians, in particular Israeli historians. But that's not going to concern me now. My point is, were the facts true that Israel was facing a to live or to die situation? Were those facts true? Then it would seem to me that Israel would have a case for firing the first shot. In fact, if you go back and look at the record, very few people immediately after the war, when the facts were not yet known, except everybody knew Israel launched the attack, they fired the first shot, very few people were willing to criticize Israel because the facts seemed to convey as Abba Egan put it, or a do or die situation. So I would say that in the case of Russia and Ukraine, the facts are true. Those facts being, number one, from 1989, which is not a short time ago at this point. Quite a few people on the screen now were not even born in 1989. From 1989, every Russian leader, bar none, was calling for a halt to NATO expansion, or was told, this was at the very beginning, or was promised that there would not be a NATO expansion. That fact to me, you can go through all.
I've read all of them, dense volumes. I just happened to miss the one. I've read all the record, all 10 billion fucking pages, single-spaced, leather-bound. Nice leather, good leather. That Gorbachev admitted it was not about NATO expanding into former Soviet states. It was about the GDR. That's the fucking what? Where's the actual? The 1 inch eastward. Where's the source that I used for my video? Is it where he says wasn't discussed? Gorbachev. This one. This is the one. Whoa, what's going on there? Yeah, this one. This is Gorbachev himself. See there, Mikhail Gorbachev. Topic of NATO expansion was not discussed at all, wasn't brought up in those years. I say this with full responsibility. Not a single Eastern European country raised the issue, not even after the Warsaw Pact ceased to exist in 1991. Western leaders didn't bring it up either. Another issue we brought up was discussed, making sure that NATO's military structures would not advance and that additional armed forces from the alliance would not be deployed on the territory of the then GDR. He said it was fulfilled. Everything that could have been and needed to be done to solidify that political obligation was done and fulfilled. It has been observed all these years. Like, bruh, fucking. I've read all the record. All of it. Large pages with small writing.
The technicalities of whether it was a verbal agreement, whether it was a written agreement, what the archives show, that to me is of secondary importance.
Oh,
It was clear
That's
from
convenient.
the get-go, beginning with Gorbachev in 1989, that the Russians understood there would not be a NATO expansion. And from the moment the NATO expansion began, the Russians were constantly remonstrating to stop the NATO expansion. Number two, after the, let's just call it, because I don't want to get into a quarrel on semantics, after the non-constitutional change of government in Ukraine in 2014, after that non-constitutional change of government in Ukraine in 2014, a significant part of the Ukrainian government, formal and informal, was now composed of representatives of Nazi or far-right organizations, which were fanatically anti-Russian. Now, I'm not going to go into the percentages, but in my opinion, it's not open to debate that, because it's a factual matter, that critical security and military positions in the government after the unconstitutional change of government belong to far-right Nazi parties. That's fact number 2. Fact number 3 was Russia made clear that the expansion of NATO to Georgia and Ukraine would be red lines for them. In particular, with Ukraine, Russia and Ukraine share about a 1,000-mile border. I can't remember now if it's 1,000, I think it's 900-mile border. And there was significant concern about US NATO missiles being placed along that border within 5 minutes distance of key Russian cities. Beyond that, there was the attempts again by Russia at the end of December 2021, going into February 2022, of proposing various diplomatic settlements of the conflict. And the steady response of the NATO head, Jens Stoltenberg, to every proposal that was made by Russia, Stoltenberg replied, and here I'll give you as close as I can to a verbatim statement. He said, everything between NATO and any other government is our business, not yours. And the Russians made 2 proposals, one to NATO and one directly to the US. And the response by NATO was, we will not promise that missiles will not be stationed in Ukraine. They said, we reserve the right to station defensive missiles. Now, when you're within 5
What does
minutes...
this have to do with Russia attacking Ukraine in 2014? Ukraine wasn't trying to join NATO in 2014. Okay.
So Russia's major cities, the distinction between offensive and defensive missiles, I think, but I'm not a military person, but I think any reasonable person would say that distinction is meaningless. And secondly, NATO responded that
So he's making it sound like he thinks NATO posed a meaningful threat to actually attack Russia with missiles. Okay.
Troops in Ukraine, not on a permanent basis, but on a rolling basis.
I feel really bad. Would you debate Finkelstein? Yeah, of course. Yeah. But I don't have long enough tentacles for that, I don't think. I really wish I'd put in more. I should have put this in my video about Mearsheimer. Actually, it was a pretty big miss not to do it. Is what Zizek was saying. Just listen to Russian leaders. They don't say we're really scared of NATO expansion or we're scared of... No, they're talking about this is Ukraine and Russia. Like, this is greater Russia. This is part of our empire. Like, that's what they say. They're like fanatics for fucking Ukrainian territory. Ugh.
Means we'll station some troops, then replace them with other troops, then replace them with other troops. But the bottom line is clear. There will be NATO missiles and NATO troops stationed in Ukraine. Now, I'll say for the last point of the comparison. And the last point of the comparison is this. When Abin made his speeches at the UN, Abba Abin, the Israeli foreign minister, when he made his speeches, he kept referring back to the Nazi Holocaust and the extermination of between 5 and 6 million Jews. And he was saying that Israel now faces another Holocaust. So that served as the backdrop. For his defense of Israel to launch the attack. Now, as I said,
it's also the fact that Egypt had invaded Israel before. There was also precedent, like when Egyptian troops are amassing near the border, that you'd think, well, okay, they've invaded us before. Russia didn't even have that. Russia's not been invaded by Ukraine.
If you go through the evidence, everything Abba Abin said about the blockade of the Straits of Tiran, about the Egyptian troops in the Sinai, about the pact with Jordan, all of it was nonsense. However, it served to make a compelling case. And I say, just as Israel had the right to invoke the backdrop of the Nazi Holocaust, Russia has the right to invoke the fact that 27 million, that's the current number, 27 million civilian people were exterminated during World War II. Germany on the Eastern Front fought a war of extermination. They wanted to create what they called Lebensraum, living space for Germans, an expanding German population. And so they proceeded to engage in a war of annihilation, a war of extermination. And the Soviet people suffered a loss, not quite the magnitude of the Nazi Holocaust directed at Jews, but certainly of a magnitude which, in my opinion, justified its right to say, sorry, Mr. Stoltenberg, but stationing missiles in Ukraine on our border, which in a matter of time almost certainly be nuclear-tipped missiles, it is our business. It is our business. And in light of that, I believe they have the right to attack. Should they have? I don't know. I'm not a military person, but I don't accept the argument because I do not believe it makes logical sense. I do not accept the argument that, yes, it's true, Russia provoked. Yes, it's true, Russia provoked. Yes, it's true, Russia provoked. But then after listing the 10,000 Russian provocations, we then hear that the invasion was criminal. That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't compute. Unless you can show me a significant option, a significant non-violent diplomatic option that Russia had but didn't exercise. If you can show me a significant option that Russia had but didn't exercise, then of course my argument is not.
They exercised it in 1994. They agreed to respect the territorial, economic, and political sovereignty of Ukraine. They did it. They just broke it. They signed the Budapest Memorandum. They have no right to stop countries who are not them, neighbors, from joining military alliances. Okay.
Compelling. But so far as I could tell, all I heard was Russia needed to give more time to diplomacy. More time to diplomacy. I'm thinking to myself, more time to diplomacy. I should think more than.
Why does this guy? I thought we cared all about international law. When did he give this? When did he say this? Because in March 2022. So that's what, like a month after the invasion? The ICJ issued a provisional order that Russia suspends its operation. And I think it also wanted a withdrawal as well, right? Like a unilateral withdrawal. Not like that was just, what Finkelstein, I guess, thinks 242 says. Yeah, they said that the Kremlin's justification for war had no evidence to support it. Because the way this case came about, just so you know, is that Russia said Ukraine was committing a genocide against ethnic Russians in the Donbass. When it turned out not to be true, their casus belli was void, like basically. So what Ukraine did to bring this case to the ICJ was they brought forth a dispute between Ukraine and Russia, arguing whether or not there was a genocide in the Donbass. And the judge very quickly said there was no evidence to support the Kremlin's justification for war. There was no evidence to support the fact that the idea that there was a genocide in the Donbass. And then they gave the provisional order to suspend the military operations immediately. That's how Ukraine did it. They brought forward a genocide dispute with the ICJ, saying that Russia's accusing us of genocide and they've started a war over it, and we don't think we committed genocide. And then the court was like, okay, looks like there's no evidence for this genocide, so Russia, you got to stop. But this is... I thought Finkelstein cared about international law. What is he talking about? Okay.
For 30 years, 3 decades is an awful lot of time. 3 decades, that's an awful lot of time. And if they miss one possible option, one tiny option, which I don't even know what it is. But if they missed it, I find it far-fetched in the extreme. Far-fetched in the extreme, given that track record that the US or NATO would have agreed to it. I see no basis for that fact. The US was determined with NATO. They were determined to subordinate Russia, to put Russia in a position that it would have to accept any ultimatum coming from the US and NATO, or else face military might on its border. And there is no way, in my opinion, that any offer the Russians made, short of surrender, would have evoked a positive reaction from the West.
Again, Russia agreed to respect Ukraine's sovereignty, and part of their sovereignty would be their right to choose to join an alliance with NATO. Okay, yeah. But I don't know why he's done that. He's just given it as a premise. It's an assumed premise that Ukraine can't join NATO. That's actually like Russia has a right to stop other countries from joining NATO. Oh, okay. I'd love to see where that right is written down. Ugh. Yeah, people are saying Finkelstein is just a campist. I think that kind of suits Kind of suits him. Yeah, makes sense.
That's that. Okay, now fire away and tell me everything I said that was wrong.
Okay. Well, you were wrong about there ever being a clear promise from the West to not expand NATO beyond the GDR. Gorbachev admitted that. You're also wrong by just assuming that Russia has any right, because we call it rights now, to stop other countries from joining NATO. You're acting as if Russia couldn't do anything, even though Russia actually did do something to stop war. They voted, they agreed in 1994, along with the UK, the United States, and Ukraine, in exchange for Ukraine and their nuclear disarmament, they were going to respect the borders, the economic sovereignty, and the political sovereignty of Ukraine. And for a purveyor of international law, a man who reads all the laws and all the pages, all 40,000 of them, 8 times before breakfast, just missed
Written agreement. What
the fact that the ICJ, very early on into the war, ruled that Russia's cause for war was invalid, that there was no evidence for it, that their cause for war, that there's a genocide happening in the Donbass, was invalid, and ordered Russia to cease hostilities and withdraw to the borders as they were before 2022? Huh. That's kind of where you're wrong, Mr. Finkelstein. And also, I think the significance of this, because again, it's a pretty boring argument he's just gone through. The significance of this is that Norman Finkelstein doesn't care about international law. The same reason that he supported the Houthis, but then he keeps on appealing to international law when it comes to Resolution 242 and all that stuff, even though even at that point, he's not even appealing to law. He's appealing to his brain-rotted campus bullshit fucking cherry-picking interpretation of those laws. Yeah, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about international law. He is, unless it suits him, which basically means never. You don't care about it at all. If you're only using it when it suits you, it means you don't care about it. It doesn't matter to you. It's just an appeal to an authority to make your case look stronger. Anyway. Yeah. Cool. Nice one. I'm bored of Finkelstein. I'm so sorry. God. I'm not gonna stream for a long time today because I have a meeting. A secret meeting soon. He appealed to the law when he was trying to deport his neighbors. Okay. Okay. Good one. If you're bored of him, does that mean you're not doing the footnotes stream? I have no idea. I'd probably rather do that off stream because I'll have more time to now. Who knows? But it's possible. Also, Twitch was really cool with the subs today, but YouTube was not. My God, where are the donos, you guys? Fuck. Oh, I have to read a couple. Whoops. Oh no, I read these ones. Martech, Ref, Mats again. Thanks very much. As if you're in a meeting as someone with a real job. You'd be surprised. What are you talking about? Come on. The Adam Friedland Show. Who's Adam Friedland? Stand-up comedian. I'll have a look. I'll have a look for different communities or different creators that I want to talk to. I think it'll be interesting. Oh, Cumtown. Maybe. I don't know anything about them. Oh. Is there anyone to raid right now? Hey, Dodo, thanks for the gifted membership. I really appreciate that. Wow. And I went to Sashi, a real one. Hey. What in God's name is Cumtown? I don't know. I've just heard of it. I don't know actually what it is, but do a quick Reddit meme review. What is there on Reddit? Is there something I missed? Novara are live. I don't think you can raid Novara. I don't think they're open to raids. What meme am I reviewing? What, this one? I've already done this one. The terrorist meme with my face put over it. Yeah, I got that one. It's very real. Very real meme. Whew. Okay, we're gonna have time for a longer stream tomorrow because I don't have meetings tomorrow or of anything tomorrow actually. Ooh. I think the editors, or at least one of them, has decided to jump onto this arc. Has decided to make something out of this. It's too good to let go. The debate was good. The preamble to the debate was good. Yeah, this will probably become a segment. I think there's a bit of a... I will definitely do the Biden thing. Okay, cool. I like doing segments like that. That was fun. Feels a bit more organized. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like I can be very spontaneous when I'm just running through my notes, but I guess I'll get used to it, you know? Is that debate on YouTube? It's on the stream VODs somewhere, but it'll become a segment as well. Anyway. All right. I need to have some food as well. Is a segment a policy? Listen. Fuck off. I don't answer difficult questions. All right. I'm jumping off, guys. Take care. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.